Chapter 1148. Sasuke, who was on the deserted island, naturally did not know that he had been targeted by Orochimaru again. At this time, he was sweating profusely as he practiced, and the expression on his face was incomparably serious. After a long time, the sun set in the west, and the light on the island also dimmed. After stopping his practice, Sasuke wiped the sweat on his face and looked at the other end of the island. He murmured, "It's been 3 days. Why hasn't Master come to test me?" This island was not considered big. He could clearly sense the chakra fluctuations of Hyojin, who was on the other end of the island. He knew that Hyojin had been on the island for the past few days, so he was a little puzzled as to why Hyojin did not come to test him every day like before. Moreover, because Hyojin had set up a rule and warned him not to leave the side where he was. Even if he was curious, he could only suppress it. As night fell, Sasuke made a bonfire on the beach and ate the food that Hyojin had prepared for him while thinking about what was on his mind. At this time, the sound of gentle footsteps came from afar. Sasuke's face suddenly lit up, and he quickly went to greet Hyojin, who was walking slowly in the night, and asked, "Master, are you going to test me?" Hyojin nodded, "Yes." "That's great." With a smile, Sasuke continued, "I've been ready for a long time. I've been waiting for you to come." Hyojin looked at Sasuke seriously. After almost a week of practice, the childishness on Sasuke's face had faded. On the surface, there was no longer the impetuousness of the past, and even the inherent arrogance had been greatly restrained. However, the sharpness was still there. From the look in his eyes, it could be seen that the young man in front of him was still the Uchiha Sasuke. After a moment of silence, Hyojin said lightly, "This is the last time." "What?" Sasuke was shocked. He thought that these days would continue for a long time, but he did not expect to suddenly receive the ultimatum of Hyojin's final test. Shock, apprehension, and all sorts of other emotions welled up in his heart. Hyojin didn't care about Sasuke's reaction and said in a cold tone, "This time you can use any means, including all the pupil techniques of your Manjikyu Sharingan. In any case, after fusing with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, his pupillary prowess will automatically recover, so there is no need to hold back in this battle." "Yes." Sasuke did not dare to argue, as he stared at the cloaked figure before him. Although it had not been long, he was used to obeying the mysterious and powerful Balrog's arrangements. Soon, Sasuke opened the Manjikyu Sharingan, and a 6-pointed star pattern appeared on his scarlet eyes, shining with a strange brilliance. He knew the strength of Hyojin, and he knew that even if he went all out, the odds of winning were extremely low, so he didn't say any nonsense, nor did he intend to test Hyojin's strength. He directly jumped into the air and launched Susanoo. Hua! Suddenly, the purple Susanoo was projected from Sasuke's body, and then quickly grew larger, directly beyond the skeleton form, and turned into a half-body armor. Whoosh! Almost at the moment when Susanoo appeared, the arrow wrapped in the black flame of Amaterasu was shot out and flew towards Hyojin on the beach. At the same time, he held his right wrist with his left hand and launched Chidori Flow. A huge electric light shot out from his palm and hit the beach and quickly spread on the beach, forming an electric blanket composed of thunder and lightning. For a moment, the purple Susanoo and the flashing electric light completely dispelled the darkness on the island, illuminating the beach under the curtain of night into a gorgeous scene. The corner of Suijin's mouth twitched, and he also instantly activated Susanoo and urged his arms to protect his body. Boom! In a burst of explosion, Hyojin's red Susanoo was knocked back several steps, but it still barely blocked the arrow shot by Sasuke's Susanoo and the lightning that spread from the ground. However, the black flame of Amaterasu on Sasuke's Susanoo spread along with the arrow to Hyojin's Susanoo and burned fiercely. At this time, Sasuke landed from the air and looked at Hyojin with a vigilant face. If it was in the past, seeing his Amaterasu burning on the opponent, he would definitely be proud, thinking that the outcome was settled and that victory was his. But now, he did not show a proud expression, because he knew that in the face of a top powerhouse like Fire Demon from Amatsukumi's organization, it would be difficult for his Amaterasu to hit. However, he still had some expectations in his heart, because this was already the strongest method he could use. On Hyojin's side, looking at the black flame that spread all over his Susanoo in the blink of an eye, he was sure that Sasuke not only used Amaterasu, but also Earth Fate, which controlled the transformation of Amaterasu's form. As the black flame of Amaterasu spread rapidly, he could feel that his ocular powers were being consumed rapidly. If he didn't do something in time, his Susanoo wouldn't last long under the scorching heat of Amaterasu. So, he raised his arm and snapped his fingers. Snap! In an instant, with a crisp snapping sound, a beautiful purple flame suddenly appeared and immediately wrapped around Hyojin's red Susanoo, repelling Sasuke's black flame of Amaterasu. Sasuke was dumbfounded upon seeing this. He thought that Hyojin would use some trick like sealing jutsu to neutralize his Amaterasu, but he did not expect that Hyojin would choose to fight fire with fire. What surprised him even more was that his Amaterasu was at a disadvantage in the battle of fire. What kind of flame is this? Almost instantly, Sasuke's attention was attracted by the strange purple flame that suppressed the black flame of Amaterasu. The black flame of Amaterasu was recognized as the most powerful flame in the shinobi world, so he could not imagine what kind of flame could suppress the black flame of Amaterasu. In just a moment, Sasuke's scattered black flame of Amaterasu was devoured by the strange purple flame, and as the black flame of Amaterasu was devoured, the swaying purple flame in the wind became more and more beautiful. At this time, surrounded by the strange purple flame, Hyojin slowly walked towards Sasuke like a god stepping on fire. Looking at the strange purple flame in front of him and the mysterious Homasubi wearing a black robe and flame pattern mask, Sasuke suddenly became a little lost, and he kept murmuring, "Sensei." Third update. I implore everyone to vote for me and support me with monthly votes. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1149. Under the frost-like hazy moonlight and the bewitching purple flames that swayed in the wind, the Balrog, who was wearing a black cloak with golden edges and a mask with a flame pattern on his head, looked so surreal and illusory. At this moment, Homasubi himself seems to have become mysterious, integrated with the illusory. Is this a Genjutsu? Sasuke's pupils gradually dilated, and his eyes began to become dull. But he knows very well that his brain has not been invaded by the foreign chakra, and everything he sees with his eyes should be real, but the scene in front of him still makes him feel like he has fallen into an illusion. Because the magnificent and illusory scene in front of him is too unreal. It doesn't look like a scene that would happen in reality at all. There's no doubt that the quiet night, the hazy moonlight, these external environments can greatly liberate the emotional part of the mind. People often diverge their thoughts in the night. Allowing their emotions to spread along with their thoughts is the same. And the quality of release chakra's fire release clone has an indescribable, mysterious temperament. In addition, Hyojin combined his own release chakra, the release pupil power of the Manjiki Sharingan, and the purple flame developed by fire release chakra is a kind of strange flame that contains some kind of spiritual power, and it is a strange flame that exerts the power of release and fire release to the extreme. Therefore, under the interaction of this unique environment, special temperament, and unique ninjutsu, although Hyojin himself did not use any jinjutsu, but it naturally produced an illusory effect like a jinjutsu, making it difficult for Sasuke, who has the Manjiki Sharingan, to distinguish between the real and the fake, and he couldn't help but indulge in it. Looking at the stunned Sasuke, Hyojin was very satisfied, and thought to himself, are you really shocked by the power of my purple flame? It was obvious that Hyojin, who had just developed the purple flame, did not realize that this new flame, other than being able to suppress the black flames of Amaterasu, also contained a mysterious spiritual power that could amplify the mysteriousness of his fire-escape doppelganger, as well as the effects of his illusions. In the sea breeze, Hyojin slowly walked in front of Sasuke and said coldly, "Why are you in a daze?" Sasuke came back to his senses. "Master," bang, without waiting for Sasuke to finish speaking, Hyojin sent him flying with a kick. He immediately lectured. You can even daydream during the test. I don't have a disciple as stupid as you. There wasn't the slightest bit of tenderness. Under the mask, Hyojin was still mysterious and cold. I lost. Unexpectedly, Sasuke did not argue. Facing such a powerful and mysterious flame demon, he lost willingly because he couldn't find a way to defeat the flame demon. His most powerful eye technique was useless in front of the flame demon. Hyojin was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Sasuke to admit defeat so quickly. He said, did I go too far and accidentally destroy his confidence? Self-confidence was very important to a ninja. A ninja who was not confident in himself would not be able to grow into a top expert. Just as Hyojin was secretly reflecting and thinking of a way to remedy the situation, Sasuke did not seem to be affected by the defeat at all. He crawled up to Hyojin and asked curiously, "Sensei, what ninjutsu is this purple flame on your body?" Seeing that Sasuke's face was not depressed, Hyojin secretly breathed a sigh of relief and replied, "This is flame release." Flame release. Sasuke was stunned for a moment and asked again, "Is it Keki limit?" Hyojin was just about to nod, but after pondering for a moment, he felt that the current flame release could no longer be considered as a Keki limit, because it was a complete fusion of In release chakra, Fire release chakra, and Lightning release chakra. Among them, In release chakra was the base, Fire release chakra was the highest, and Lightning release chakra was the auxiliary. Therefore, it was more appropriate to define the current flame release as a Keki limit. Therefore, Kuroto said lightly, "No, the flame release I use is a kind of Keki elimination." Sasuke suddenly understood. So it is a Keki limit. No wonder it can suppress my Amaterasu. The Sharingan belongs to the Keki limit. So most of the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil techniques are also classified as Keki limit. This is also the case for Amaterasu, which is known as the strongest flame in the shinobi world. Therefore, when he learned that the purple flame Hyojin used is a stronger Keki limit than Keki limit, Sasuke felt that it was only natural that his Amaterasu was suppressed. No wonder Jishue, San, and Shinichi. San were not Sensei's opponent. Sensei is probably the most powerful Uchiha. While admiring Hyojin, Sasuke carefully glanced at Hyojin and asked anxiously, "Sensei, do I have no chance now?" Hyojin didn't answer immediately, but remained silent. This so-called test, on the one hand, is for Hyojin's own consideration. For example, to further develop the flame release requires Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan, so he can't immediately fuse the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan for Sasuke. And Sasuke, who has awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, is a good candidate to vent his anger and practice his Manjikyu Sharingan. On the other hand, he hopes to pass this test and let Sasuke experience how hard it is to obtain the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, and let Sasuke restrain his arrogance a little. Now it seems that both of these purposes have been achieved. His development of the flame release has been successfully completed, and Sasuke doesn't seem to be as arrogant as when he first awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. No, he is even a little too obedient. Forget it. These details are not important. Hyojin quickly drove this doubt out of his mind, and Hyojin's silence made Sasuke even more uneasy. He can't say why, but in the face of Hyojin, he simply can't muster the courage to argue. After a long time, under the eager gaze of Sasuke, Hyojin said in a cold tone, "I don't have time to waste with you here. Clean up. We're going to carry out the fusion surgery immediately." What? Sasuke was taken aback. He thought that the best result would be for Hyojin to give him another chance. But he never thought that Hyojin would directly prepare to carry out the fusion surgery for him. For a moment, he was surprised and happy, and asked, "Sensei, did I pass the test?" Hyojin glanced at Sasuke and asked, "What do you think?" Sasuke was startled for a moment, and the joy on his face suddenly disappeared, and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry to disappoint you." Hyojin didn't speak and directly turned his head to the side. After a simple cleaning up, Sasuke carried his backpack and came to Hyojin's side. "Sensei, it's time to go. I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes." Chapter 1150. At this time, Hyojin took out a cloth from the ninja bag on his waist and threw it to Sasuke. Cover your eyes with this. Blindfold. Subconsciously taking the cloth, Sasuke asked curiously. Why? Hyojin casually explained. The fusion surgery will be carried out in a small stronghold of Amatsukami. You're not a member of Amatsukami, so in order to keep it a secret, you need to blindfold your eyes. I see. Sasuke nodded his head and tied the cloth belt for himself. After confirming that Sasuke tied the cloth to cover his vision, Hyojin reached out and pressed on Sasuke's shoulder while communicating with the giant Tenseigan in the Sky Fortress. Because of the seal not long ago, Hyojin now needs to communicate in advance if he wants to use the power of the giant Tenseigan. He can't use it instantly like before. Soon, after obtaining the power of the giant Tenseigan, Hyojin activated Rain Pull and flew into the air with Sasuke. The blindfolded Sasuke was a little surprised. He didn't expect Homasubi to have this ability. Taking advantage of the gap between flying to the Sky Fortress, Hyojin told Sasuke about the various things to pay attention to during the fusion surgery, and finally said, after the surgery, it will take about 2 to 3 months for the fusion period. You have to be mentally prepared. So long. Sasuke was a little surprised. He thought that as long as the surgery was completed, he would immediately be able to obtain the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Hyojin didn't explain much, but simply said, the fusion of the ocular power takes time. In fact, the estimate of 2 to 3 months mentioned by Kuroto just now is already very optimistic. If things go wrong, the fusion period may take even longer. This is because after this period of torment, whether it is the pair of kaleidoscopes in his eye sockets or Sasuke's kaleidoscopes, the ocular power consumption is very serious. Although this will not affect the final effect after the fusion, it will delay the progress of the fusion. I understand. Sasuke immediately nodded. During the fusion period, you won't be able to use your eyes, so during this period, you will be in a state of blindness. After a pause, Hyojin continued, but you are not completely idle. You can take this opportunity to carefully feel the process of pupil fusion. This kind of opportunity is very rare in the shinobi world. Sasuke nodded again. Yes. After a while, the two of them flew to the floating fortress not far from the island. We're here. Hyojin released Sasuke. Where is this? Sasuke thought that Hyojin was going to take him to another island, but he didn't expect that they would fly all the way up and not descend at all. Finally, they came to a place that looked like land. Follow me closely. Kuroto didn't explain. He just said something coldly and then walked in the direction of the operating room. Are we on the moon? Sasuke asked curiously as he quickly followed. With his current strength, even if his eyes were blindfolded, it wouldn't hinder him from keeping up with Hyojin's pace. Yes, Hyojin responded casually. He was happy that Sasuke had such a misunderstanding, so he naturally wouldn't correct anything. I'm actually on the moon. Sasuke suddenly became excited. Hyojin didn't say anything else and led Sasuke all the way to an operating room specially prepared for him. This operating room was connected to a small living area that could satisfy Sasuke's life for the next few months, and Hyojin had set up layers of seals to prevent Sasuke from running around in the floating fortress. Hyojin said, "You can take off the bandage now. This will be the area where you will live for the next few months." Sasuke quickly pulled off the bandage and looked at the operating room and the small living area connected to the operating room. While Sasuke was familiarizing himself with the environment, Hyojin warned coldly, "Remember, you can only move in this area. If you dare to trespass into other areas, I will immediately execute you." Sasuke promised honestly, "Please rest assured, I will not trespass without your permission." Hyojin gently nodded. "Okay, lie down on the operating table by yourself. I will go and remove the eye now, and then immediately perform the fusion transplant surgery for you." Sasuke lied down on the operating table, then hesitated for a moment and asked, "Sensei, after I get the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, will you still guide me?" Hyojin, who was walking out of the operating room, was a little surprised. He looked back and glanced at Sasuke. "Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up?" Sasuke didn't even think before answering. No. It's over, it's over. This kid has really been beaten silly by me. Hyojin immediately said coldly, You are not a member of Amitsukami. I have no obligation to guide a piece of trash like you. Sasuke still wanted to say something. Then Hyojin directly interrupted him impatiently. We should not have any more interactions in the future. After you return to the Uchiha clan, do not mention to others that I have guided you. Hyojin was really a little worried that Sasuke had been beaten silly by him. Itachi and Jishue would argue with him. Sasuke felt lost for a moment, then asked, Sensei, can you give me a piece of equipment? Hyojin did not stop walking, and as he walked out, he casually asked, What equipment do you want? Can you give me your gloves? After a pause, Sasuke quickly explained, I think it's cool. Is now the time to think about whether it's cool or not. Just stay here and adjust your mentality. The operation is about to begin. After teaching Sasuke a lesson, Hyojin left the operating room. His injuries are almost healed, plus the flame release has been fully developed, so temporary equipment such as gloves are no longer of any use to him. Moreover, a pair of gloves is not worth much money. At most, it took him some effort to inscribe the Zen Fire seal on it. Since Sasuke thinks it's cool, then it's not a bad idea to give it to him as hush money. After a while, Hyojin came to his operating room, then removed the soul descent technique. His soul returned to the Yin release, and quickly removed the Manjikyu Sharingan from the eye sockets of the fire clone. After thinking for a while, Hyojin sent his soul into the water clone again. Then, he brought Fuyue's pair of Manjikyu Sharingan to the operating room where Sasuke was. The reason why he used the water clone to perform the surgery on Sasuke was because he realized that Sasuke's observation and perception were actually very meticulous. So if he used the Yin release, it was very likely that his identity would be exposed. It's going to be a new week soon, and the leaderboard will be updated. I implore everyone to recommend and support me. It's just a small effort, please. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 11:51. Is this place on the moon? Sasuke paced back and forth in the operating room with a face full of curiosity. He didn't doubt that he was on the moon because he believed that Hyojin wouldn't lie to him. At this moment, footsteps sounded outside the corridor. Sasuke quickly looked over, but when he saw that the person's face was wearing a mask with a water pattern, his face suddenly showed an irresistible sense of loss. Hyojin ignored Sasuke and placed the small storage jar containing Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan on the tool rack next to the operating table, and then began to organize the surgical instruments. At this time, Sasuke walked over and asked, Are you Suijin of Amitsukami? Hyojin nodded, then pointed to the operating table and said, Lie down, we'll start the operation now. Sasuke asked, Where's Sensei? Where's Uchiha Hikari? Why didn't she perform the operation for me? I'll be in charge of the operation. She went to deal with other things. After a pause, Hyojin pointed to the operating table again and said, Don't make me repeat myself. Sasuke had no choice but to lie down on the operating table. At this time, Hyojin opened the storage jar containing Fuyue's Manjikyu Sharingan and explained, This time, your father's Sharingan will be implanted into your eye socket. At that time, you may feel swelling, tingling, or local paralysis, but these are normal symptoms after the operation, so you don't have to be too nervous. Sasuke nodded lightly. Hyojin continued. After the completion of the fusion, the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique may be inherited from you, but there is also a certain probability that it will be inherited from your father. Sasuke listened quietly and didn't say anything. His and his father's kaleidoscope ocular techniques were not that different. Both of them had Amaterasu. The only difference was that his second ocular technique was Amaterasu, while his father's was an illusion ocular technique. Whether it was the Earth Life or his father's illusory eye technique, they were both acceptable to him. At this time, Hyojin picked up the scalpel and cut open the outside of Sasuke's eye socket. He said, In order to let you clearly feel the fusion of the ocular power, I will not use anesthesia on you during the surgery. You have to bear with it. Sasuke clenched his teeth. It's okay. Hyojin stopped talking and focused on the surgery. Transplant surgery was nothing to him now, but once he stepped onto the operating table, he had to be cautious even if it was the smallest and simplest surgery. Soon, Sasuke's eye sockets began to feel the swelling that Hyojin had mentioned before, accompanied by a faint stinging pain. Damn it, it feels like something is drilling into my brain. As he breathed, the pain quickly escalated and filled Sasuke's brain, making it hard for him to bear for a while. However, in front of the members of Amatsukami, he didn't want to show weakness, let alone expose his weakness. So, he suppressed the pain and pretended to be fine. Just when Sasuke made up his mind to fight to the end, he heard Hyojin's voice in his ear. Okay, the surgery is over. Huh, so fast. Sasuke was shocked. From the first cut, he could be sure that not even 3 minutes had passed. It's just a small eye transplant surgery. How long do you want? After smiling, Hyojin tied the bandage around Sasuke's eye. From now on, don't force yourself to use the Sharingan. Sasuke touched his eye through the bandage and asked, when can I remove the bandage? Hyojin shook his head. It depends on the speed of fusion. I can't give you a specific answer now. Thank you. Sasuke got up and bowed to Hyojin. Although he didn't know what kind of agreement his family had reached with Amatsukami, Amatsukami had transplanted his father's Manjikyu Sharingan to him according to the agreement, so he was sincerely grateful to Amatsukami. It can be said that from this moment on, he put down his grudge with Amatsukami. After putting away the surgical instruments, Hyojin looked at Sasuke, who was still in a stable mood, pondered for a moment, and said, listen carefully. Now, I will tell you a secret. Sasuke was startled, then pricked up his ears and listened attentively. Hyojin slowly said, Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is not the end. There's a stronger pupil technique above it. Rinnegan? In an instant, Sasuke blurted out. Because in the shinobi world, the only pupil technique stronger than the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is Nagato's Rinnegan, which is known as the Sage's Eye. Yes. Hyojin nodded and said, as long as some harsh conditions can be met, then the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan can evolve into Rinnegan. Sasuke was shocked. What? Rinnegan evolved from the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan? Then, doesn't that mean that Sage of Six Paths also had Sharingan at the beginning? Hyojin replied, sort of. There is no doubt that Sage of Six Paths first had Byakugan, which is the standard of the Otsutsuki clan. After that, Sage of Six Paths was stimulated, and his Byakugan mutated, which led to the emergence of Sharingan. Therefore, it is not wrong for Sasuke to say that Sage of Six Paths had Sharingan. However, Sage of Six Paths did not go through the stages of Manjikyu Sharingan or Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, but directly awakened the Rinnegan from the three-tomo Sharingan. From this, it can be seen that Byakugan and Sharingan are actually of the same origin, or it can be said that Byakugan is the foundation of everything. Whether it's Sharingan, Rinnegan, or even Hyojin's Tenseigan, they all evolve from the Byakugan. At the thought that he might be able to evolve the Rinnegan like Nagato, Sasuke was surprised and happy, and eagerly asked, what are the conditions to evolve the Rinnegan? Hyojin said, I'll tell you this after you have the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. I'm mentioning this to you now because I want you to understand that if you seriously comprehend the fusion of pupil powers now, it will be very helpful for you to evolve the Rinnegan in the future, so I prepared a pen and paper for you. You'd better record all your feelings during this period of time. Hyojin himself had also experienced the fusion of pupil powers once, but at that time, he did not survive the gene recombination and fainted, so he did not have the chance to comprehend the fusion of pupil powers in detail. So he needed first-hand information from Sasuke. Sasuke nodded. Since it was related to the Rinnegan, he would naturally take it seriously. Hyojin did not say anything else. After taking one last look at Sasuke, he turned and left the operating room. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1152. At present, the most orthodox and operable way to evolve the Rinnegan is undoubtedly to let an Uchiha with the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan transplant the cells of the first generation. In short, it is the combination of the extreme Yang chakra and the extreme Yin chakra. Whether or not he is the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra is not the decisive factor. In the original story, the reason why Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke awakened the Rinnegan one after the other was the coincidence of the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra. The reason why Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke awakened the Rinnegan one after the other is because the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra has a stronger release chakra than other Uchiha. That is to say, in terms of evolving the Rinnegan, chakra is essentially the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra and the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra. This set of theories was not Kuroto's random speculation. The most direct proof is that those Otsutsuki with the Rinnegan don't have Otsutsuki Indra or Otsutsuki Azura's chakra. The Rinnegan in Xiang Li's eye sockets is the product of the Danzo's Kekkei, Jinkai, fusion ritual. Therefore, as long as the power of yin and yang is strong enough, even a Manjikyu Sharingan or Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is not a necessary condition to evolve the Rinnegan. For example, the Sage of Six Paths directly evolved from the 3 Tomo Sharingan to the Rinnegan. But in practice, the most effective way to evolve the Rinnegan is the fusion of Otsutsuki Indra and Otsutsuki Azura chakra. Because in terms of the strength of yin and yang chakra, there are only a few people in the shinobi world who can surpass these two brothers. In addition to improving the power of the bloodline, there are few effective methods to improve the strength of a single attribute of chakra, especially the yin and yang chakra, which are relatively special compared to the 5 elements of chakra. This is also the reason why Hyojin supported Itachi's choice and left the opportunity to fuse with the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to Sasuke. Because once Sasuke obtains the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, then the strength of his yin chakra will be very close to that of a living Otsutsuki Indra and almost all the conditions to evolve the Rinnegan. The only thing missing is the last step of implanting the cells of the first generation and fusing with the yang chakra of Otsutsuki Azura. After leaving Sasuke's activity area, Hyojin found Xiang Li in the Sky Fortress and briefly told Xiang Li about Sasuke. Xiang Li asked, "Sama, do you want me to prepare food for him on time?" Hyojin shook his head. "No need. I have already prepared food and water in his activity area. You just need to monitor his movements and make sure that he stays in his activity area." "Yes, Sama." Xiang Lin hurriedly agreed. Her Kagura mind eye is most suitable for surveillance. Except for Shinichi, who has extraordinary perception, it is very difficult for others to detect the surveillance of her Kagura mind. Even Itachi and Jishuei are no exception. Hyojin glanced back at Sasuke's activity area and said, "Since you misunderstood that this is the moon, then let's continue misunderstanding. On the real moon, although there are constantly figures coming and going in the magnificent palace, there is no aura of life at all, as if it is shrouded in an indescribable silence. In the most central room of the palace, Otsutsuki Samurai looked at the Byakugan in the storage can with hesitation. Unlike Hyojin, who is experienced, Otsutsuki Samurai has no surgical experience at all, coupled with the fact that he is the one who needs the transplant surgery. It is a small operation for Hyojin, but it is a big trouble for him. It took him several weeks just to collect and sort out the information. Not long after, a row of Tenseigan puppets pushed the door and walked into the room. Otsutsuki Samurai didn't turn his head and asked indifferently, "Is everything ready?" The leading Tenseigan puppet first bowed to Otsutsuki Samurai, and then replied respectfully, "Master, the barrier has been opened, and the passage between us and the shinobi world has been completely cut off." Otsutsuki Samurai's expression remained unchanged. He knows that during the period of fusion with the Tenseigan, it is his most vulnerable time, and there are strong enemies in the shinobi world that can threaten him, so he can't be too careful. Then, he waved his hand and said, "You stay, the others withdraw." The leading Tenseigan puppet stood still, while the other Tenseigan puppets respectfully withdrew from the room after saluting Kuroto. Otsutsuki Samurai lied on the bed at this time and said, "Let's start." On the moon today, except for Otsutsuki Samurai, the others are all Tenseigan puppets activated by Tenseigan chakra and he doesn't know how to perform surgery himself, so the transplant of Byakugan can only be done by the Tenseigan puppet. Yes, master. The Tenseigan puppet came to the bedside and began the Byakugan transplant surgery. Compared with ordinary people, the Tenseigan puppet has no fear, tension, and other emotions. Plus, the puppets on the moon are not inferior to those in the shinobi world. The structure of the puppet is very delicate, so after familiarizing itself with the information compiled by Otsutsuki Samurai, although the Tenseigan puppet is not as good as Hyojin, it is enough to cope with the level of Byakugan transplant surgery. In just a moment, the surgery was completed smoothly. The Tenseigan puppet covered Otsutsuki Samurai's eyes with a white cloth, and then retreated to the side respectfully, and stood quietly by the bed like a statue. Otsutsuki Samurai, who was lying on the bed, didn't care about the Tenseigan puppet, but focused on the pupil fusion in his eye socket. Thump thump. Thump thump, a sound similar to a heartbeat echoed in Otsutsuki Samurai's mind. At this moment, Otsutsuki Samurai could clearly feel that his pupil power was rising rapidly with this beating sound. However, just as his face showed joy, the beating sound stopped abruptly, and everything returned to calm. How could this be? Otsutsuki Samurai, who tried to fuse for the first time, was stunned. Such a change made him a little at a loss for a while. Thump thump. After a long time, the beating sound sounded again, but this time it was much weaker than before. If one didn't feel it carefully, they might even ignore the beating sound. This continued intermittently for 3 days, and Otsutsuki Samurai finally realized something and thought to himself, is it because the Byakugan of the Hyuga family's master is not pure enough? Otsutsuki Samurai could feel that his pupil power was continuously improving these days, but the speed of improvement was much slower than he expected. The second update is here. I will continue to ask for recommendation votes on Monday. In addition, I would like to thank the students who rewarded me today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1153. Inside the Sky Fortress. Sasuke, who had completed the transplant surgery, lay on the bed and felt the fusion of his ocular powers. During the process, although the swelling in his eye socket was still there, it was much slower than when he had just completed the surgery, and the stinging pain had almost disappeared. Because it's the fusion of 2 pairs of eyes, so only blood relatives can transplant the ocular powers. Sasuke, who had nothing to do, felt the fusion of the ocular powers while thinking. Although he had not formally learned medical ninjutsu, because Sakura had been interning in my hospital since she graduated from the ninja school and often mentioned medical ninjutsu to him, he was not completely clueless about medical ninjutsu. He knew that the organ rejection between blood relatives was relatively small. Ugh, it's starting again. Suddenly, Sasuke's entire face twisted, and 2 lines of bloody tears flowed out from under the bandage in his eye socket. This kind of sudden pain was obviously not the first time this happened. Including this time, he had experienced this kind of sudden pain 4 times. Each time, there was no warning. Not only was it fierce, but it was also accompanied by bloody tears, as if he was using the Manjikyu Sharingan's ocular techniques in a state of overdraft. However, this kind of pain came and went quickly. In just a few short breaths, the pain subsided, followed by a huge improvement in his ocular powers. The improvement was so great that even Sasuke himself was amazed. After taking a breath, Sasuke got up and took out the notebook left by Hyojin and seriously recorded. There was the 4th pain today, and the process was as short as the previous few. After the pain, my ocular powers have improved again. I'm sure that my current ocular powers are stronger than when I first awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan. To what extent can the ocular powers be improved? I can't imagine now. My chakra seems to have changed too, and I feel closer to Sensei. Maybe Sensei doesn't have the ordinary Manjikyu Sharingan, but the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that I will soon have. At this point, Sasuke put down the pen in his hand. He began to subconsciously recall the time he spent on the island. Scenes flashed through his mind, and finally, the scene in his mind stopped at the dreamy scene of Hyojin controlling the fire escape clone, unleashing the purple flame under the night sky. That scene had left too much of shock in his heart. Even after so many days, he still couldn't forget it. Zien, Sasuke murmured. Because the island was not big, he could feel Hyojin's chakra waves from the other end of the island. Therefore, he knew that Hyojin had been practicing or developing something during the days when he was being tested. Coupled with the purple flame that has never appeared in the shinobi world before, the answer is self-evident. Sensei's famous golden flame is a kind of Kekkei limit, and the newly developed purple flame is a kind of Kekkei elimination. So this purple flame is most likely developed on the basis of the golden flame. After diverting his thoughts, Sasuke continued to analyze. The golden flame is definitely a fusion of the nature of fire and thunder. So what is the third type of chakra added to the purple flame? Wind? Earth? No, it's in-release chakra. With the Uchiha clan's innate understanding of fire release, coupled with the chakra waves that Hyojin sensed on the island when he was developing the purple flame, Sasuke keenly guessed that the three types of chakra required for the purple flame were fire, thunder, and in. When my eternal Manjikyu Sharingan completes the fusion, the strength of my chakra should be close to Sensei's. At that time, I will also develop the purple flame and make Sensei look at me in a different light. The corner of Sasuke's mouth twitched, and he secretly made up his mind. It was not difficult to guess the attribute of a certain type of bloodline limit or bloodline elimination chakra. Many of the attributes of bloodline limit chakra were public, but knowing it did not mean that one could complete the fusion and develop the bloodline limit. However, Sasuke was different. He felt the rapid increase of the ocular power in his eyes, and he believed that he could do it. Besides, he did not want to see Sensei turn his face to the side in disappointment every time. He wanted Sensei to look at him on the other side of the Sky Fortress. Standing in front of the large nutrition tank with the Yang release clone, Hyojin's face was full of anticipation. During this period of time, while the Yang release clone was developing in the nutrition tank, he not only completed the strengthening of the fire release clone, but also completed the transplant operation on Sasuke. After finishing all these, his Yang release clone was almost fully developed. In another week, he could remove all kinds of life support equipment and enter the development stage. Through the glass of the large nutrition tank, Hyojin carefully observed the Yang release clone inside. The size of this Yang release clone was slightly bigger than the previous 5 clones. Its hair color was the same as Hyojin's Yin release clone, which was normal black. It had a decent appearance and looked very easygoing. It did not have the mysterious temperament of the fire release clone, nor did it have the sharp edge of the wind release clone. Of course, Hyojin did not care about its appearance. What he really cared about was the pair of Byakuya in the Yang release clone's eye sockets. Due to the lack of a soul, the Byakuya that was cloned in the form of cell clones were essentially half-finished products. Only when it was combined with Hyojin's own spirit body would it be considered a complete pair of Byakuya. The previous water, fire, wind, earth, and lightning clones were all the same. However, Kuroto didn't know whether it was because of the primogenitor cells or some other reason. The Byakuya on this Yang release clone was very active. Although there was still a gap between it and the real Byakuya, it showed far more activity than the previous 5 clones. Rubbing his chin, Hyojin thought, no matter what, once the primogenitor cells are added, it has the effect of turning something rotten into something magical. This must be the power of the holy tree. Judging from the current data, there should be no doubt that the primogenitor cells contain the power of the holy tree. It can be said that among all the reincarnations of Otsutsuki Azura, the physique of the primogenitor cells is the most special. In this regard, even Naruto can't compare with the primogenitor cells. This should be the reason why the primogenitor cells are so special. This is also the reason why it is difficult for other forces to control the primogenitor cells, except for the bloodline of the Sage of the 6 Paths. Because the Holy Tree itself is a weapon developed by the Otsutsuki clan to plunder the energy of the planet. Its status is at the top of the shinobi world, and it can almost suppress all forces in the shinobi world that are not of the Otsutsuki clan. Not to mention the complete Holy Tree. Even the outer path demon statue and the nine-tailed beast that were separated from the holy tree can almost run rampant in the shinobi world as long as they don't encounter the bloodline of the sage of the six paths. There is still a long way to go. Thinking of this, Hyojin secretly restrained the pride of conquering the primogenitor cells, because compared to the Otsutsuki clan that developed the holy tree, his achievement is really not worth mentioning. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1154. It was one of Hyojin's strengths to be able to be wary of his inflated ego and make adjustments in time. Moreover, he knew that his current research results were nothing compared to the Otsutsuki clan, who had developed the Tree of God and was able to plunder energy from the planets. After adjusting his mentality, he immediately immersed himself in his intense research. In the blink of an eye, a week had passed. Just as Hyojin had expected, the Young Escape clone had completed its development successfully. After taking the Young Escape clone out of the large nutrition tank, Hyojin used various expensive equipment to conduct a comprehensive examination on the Young Escape clone. Through the examination, Hyojin found that the Young Escape clone's vital signs were normal. The cell activity was twice that of his Een Escape clone, 5 times that of his Wind Escape clone, and 10 times that of his Water Escape clone and Fire Escape clone. As he recorded the Young Escape clone's data, Hyojin fell into deep thought. Based on the data of the Young Escape clone, its strength was already comparable to his Een Escape main body and Wind Escape clone. He could completely skip the development process. However, this was not a good thing because the ritual required balance. Fortunately, I had expected this and increased the strength of my Water Escape clone and Fire Escape clone. Fortunately, Kuroto had anticipated this situation in advance, and while developing the Yang Release clone, he had already started to strengthen the Water and Fire clones, which were the weakest among the clones. Therefore, from the looks of it, his Een Escape main body and his 6 clones could barely maintain a balance. However, this balance was already very fragile. Once the Young Escape clone strength was further increased, this balance might be broken and the weaker Water Escape clone and Fire Escape clone would once again become an obvious weakness in the ritual. Phew! After exhaling softly, Hyojin started to form a hand seal. Now he could only hope that the Young Escape clone came with the Wood Escape technique. That was the only way to ensure that the Young Escape clone's strength would not be greatly increased. Soon, Hyojin completed the hand seal and performed the Soul Descend technique. With a whoosh, the Young Escape clone that was lying on the operating table sat up. After nimbly jumping off the operating table, Hyojin's expression suddenly changed after he sensed the new clone body. He did not know why, but when his spirit entered the Young Escape clone body, he felt a very special feeling. If his spirit felt freedom in his Een Escape clone body and harmony in his other clones, then warmth in this Young Escape clone body. This feeling was like soaking in a hot spring. It was very comfortable. Is it because this clone's chakra contains the characteristics of the Tree of God, or is it because of the boundless nature power that is produced after the Een and Yang fusion? For a moment, Hyojin could not determine the source of this feeling. This was because his Young Escape clone body was very special. On one hand, it inherited the characteristics of the Tree of God in the cells of the first generation. On the other hand, after the first generation cells representing Young Escape chakra fused with his cells representing Een Escape chakra, it naturally completed the Een and Yang fusion, giving the clone body a certain amount of boundless nature power. This fusion was a bit similar to the fusion between Uchiha and Senju. However, Uchiha, who represented Een Escape, became Hyuga. To be more precise, the Een Escape descendant of his younger brother Himura merged with the Yang Escape descendant of his older brother Himura. No matter what the reason is, one thing is for sure. This clone body is enough to nourish my spirit body. The effect is almost the same as when I was in my body. While feeling the Young Escape clone body further, Hyojin went to the training field of the Sky Fortress. Along the way, he carefully felt the Byakugan in his eye sockets. He found that this pair of highly active, semi-finished Byakugan had undergone a strange change after fusing with his spirit body. Not to mention that the vision of the eyes was very clear after activating the Byakugan. The distance of the X-ray vision was also far beyond the normal Byakugan, only slightly inferior to his Tenseigan. This should be the extremely pure Byakugan. If I toss around a little more, there might be some strange changes. Hyojin was very sure that the purity of this pair of Byakugan definitely surpassed the Byakugan of the other clones, and even surpassed the Byakugan of everyone in the ninja world. After collecting his thoughts, he glanced at a wooden target in the distance of the training field. Whoosh, with a teleportation technique, Hyojin flashed in front of the wooden target and sent it flying with a punch. It was just a wooden target, so he felt that he wouldn't be able to detect anything. So, he immediately activated a few modified puppets in the training field and pounced on the puppet. Bang bang. Accompanied by a few low muffled sounds, the puppets that had been specially modified and strengthened by him were as fragile as tofu under his random blows and instantly disintegrated. Looking at the puppet fragments scattered on the ground, Hyojin smiled slightly. The strength of the body is much greater than I thought. After pondering for a while, Hyojin summoned the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to the training field, and then ordered the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to use magnetic release to create layers of iron shields for the puppets. With the iron shield created by the magnetic dun, these puppets were finally able to withstand a few blows, but even so, as long as Suijin exerted his full strength, he would be able to break through the barrier of the magnetic dun iron shield and smash the puppets behind it with a single punch. Clenching his fist, Hyojin smiled with satisfaction. As long as I receive formal training, it shouldn't be difficult for my Yang release clone to surpass Tsunade. Tsunade's monstrous strength was both a bloodline and a skill. In the original space and time, Sakura, who was not of the Thousand Hand clan, had mastered this skill, but only with both bloodline and skill could the monstrous strength be exerted to the extreme, such as Tsunade, who could tear Susanoo with her bare hands. And Hyojin's Yang release clone was even better than Tsunade in terms of bloodline. Because the Yang release chakra in Tsunade's body obviously did not have the characteristics of the sacred tree, but Hyojin's Yang release clone not only had the characteristics of the sacred tree, but also had a certain amount of omniscient nature's power. This meant that the potential of Hyojin's Yang release clone was greater than Tsunade's. As long as there was reasonable training and development, it would definitely not be a problem for it to tear Susanoo with its bare hands. Of course, Hyojin did not have any special obsession with tearing Susanoo. What he cared about most at the moment was whether this Yang release clone was equipped with wood release or not as he expected. Soon, Hyojin raised his hands and began to slowly make hand seals while shouting, "Would release 4 pillars." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1155. Rumble. As the chakra inside the clone's body poured out, wooden stakes rose from the ground, intertwined with each other and assembled together, and in just a moment, a huge wooden house appeared in the practice field. Looking at the wooden house that was completed in the blink of an eye, Hyojin's mouth twitched. Sure enough, it can use wood release. He was not surprised that the Yang escape clone was able to use the wood escape. This attempt was just to confirm his theory. Because all ninjas who have successfully transplanted the first-generation cells have the ability to use wood release, the only difference is the strength of the power. Simply put, the first-generation cells have the ability to use wood release between Kekii Genkai and Kekii Genkai elimination. The strength of wood release is related to the physique of the caster. The closer the ninja is to the Otsutsuki blood, the stronger the power of wood release. Conversely, if the ninja lacks the support of the Otsutsuki blood, even if the first-generation cells are successfully transplanted, the power of wood release will be very limited. The most intuitive example is Uchiha Madara. After successfully transplanting the Hashirama cells, he can even use the top-level wood release ninjutsu, such as the descent of the flower tree world. But Danzo doesn't have the bloodline of Otsutsuki, so even if he successfully transplanted the Hashirama cells, it will be difficult for him to use wood release as a regular method to fight. Slowly walking into the newly built wooden house, Hyojin carefully observed. The wood release ninjutsu of the 4 pillars was found in the secret archives of the village. It is said that at the beginning of the village's establishment, a large number of houses were built with this ninjutsu and completed the initial transition. After walking around the house, Hyojin said, "Although there are no furnishings, the overall structure is strong enough to block the wind and rain, and a little decoration can be sold." After a little confirmation of the strength of the wooden house, Hyojin ordered the 3 generations Kazekage puppets to dismantle the wooden house and then left the practice room. Being able to use wood release ninjutsu means that the clone has met the basic standards of Hyojin. Next, it is time to test the limit of the clone. This step is essential because he must thoroughly understand the limit of the clone before the ceremony. And to test the limit of wood release, naturally, it can't be carried out in the Sky Fortress. The lesson from the last test of dust release is too tragic. Kuroto doesn't want to spend money to repair the Sky Fortress again. It didn't take long for Suijin to arrive at the island where he had tested Sasuke before with the help of the clone body. Knowing that Kuroto can control different clones, Gaara was only a little curious about Kuroto's new identity, but didn't care too much about it, and asked, "My lord, shall we start the test now?" Hyojin gently nodded. There is nothing more suitable than a tailed beast to test the power of wood release. Therefore, Hyojin looked for Gaara, who had one tail sealed in his body. He wanted to test the limit of wood release through Gaara. At the same time, he also wanted to beat Gaara so that he can further use the power of the tailed beast. This time, Naruto accidentally mastered the 9 Tails chakra mode. His strength has greatly increased. This made him realize that simple evasion is not safe. The safest way is to let Gaara have a certain ability to protect himself. As a Jinchuriki, the most convenient and effective way for Gaara to improve his strength is to master the power of the tailed beast in his body like Naruto. Hyojin said while printing the hand seals, "After the seal is unlocked, the will of the one tail will quickly recover. You have to be prepared." I Love Luo took a deep breath and nodded solemnly. He knew that the one tail in his body is a nightmare that he can never escape from. Only by facing it bravely can he get rid of the shadow that shrouded his childhood. Release. After completing the hand seals, Hyojin removed all the seals that he had placed on Gaara's body. Ha ha! Almost the moment the seal was removed, an arrogant laughter came from Gaara's body. Immediately after that, Gaara lost consciousness. A large amount of quicksand surged out of his body, and his body rapidly expanded. In just a few breaths, Gaara's body was devoured by the quicksand, fusing into the body of the huge one-tailed crane. It went berserk. Hyojin's eyes turned cold. He knew that the one-tailed crane was not easy to deal with. However, he did not expect that the crane would break free the moment the seal was removed and suppress Gaara. Is it because of the rebound caused by the excessive seal? Or does Gaara have a psychological shadow against the crane? I don't have the confidence to face it, so I lost my guard? In an instant, countless thoughts surged into Hyojin's mind. Ha, I'm out again. Soon, the entire island was filled with the laughter and arrogance of the one-tailed crane. Hyojin frowned and confirmed that Gaara had gone berserk. At this moment, the crane also noticed Hyojin, who was not far away. It roared with a ferocious expression, "Damn human." After roaring, the crane took a deep breath and shouted at Hyojin, "Wind release, air, training bullet." Boom! The power of the ninjutsu performed by the tailed beast was naturally extraordinary. The air training bullet was like a passing typhoon, instantly razing everything on the island. Looking at the destructive air training bullet, Hyojin's expression did not change. He quickly formed a hand seal and said, "Would release, ranking technique." Boom! In an instant, a wooden shield engraved with fangs rose from both sides of Hyojin, covering Hyojin inside. This ranking technique was the strongest defensive ninjutsu that Hyojin found in the secret technique archive of the village. In the battle at the Valley of the End, the first generation relied on this technique to successfully block the attack of Uchiha Madara's mighty Susanoo. As expected, after a series of tremors, Hyojin, who was under the ranking technique, was unscathed. Seeing that Hyojin had actually used the wood release, the crane's pupils shrank, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes instinctively. At this moment, the wooden shield protecting Hyojin opened, revealing Hyojin, who looked indifferent inside. The crane asked, "Who are you? Why do you know the wood release?" Hyojin did not waste any time. He formed another hand seal and shouted, "Wood release, wood dragon technique." Whoosh! As soon as Hyojin's voice fell, a thick wooden stake emerged from the ground in front of him. Then, the wooden stake rapidly grew thicker and bigger under the support of Hyojin's chakra. In the end, it turned into a wooden dragon that was not inferior to the crane's tail. It circled around and entangled the crane. Damn it! The crane was shocked to find that its chakra had uncontrollably surged towards the wooden dragon that was entangling it. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 11:56. Damn guy, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Shohei's hysterical shouts were still lingering in the sky above the small island. After being entangled by Hyojin's wood dragon technique, Shoha immediately struggled violently. But no matter how it struggled, the wood dragon that entangled it didn't relax. Not only that, but as a large number of tailed beast chakra flowed into the wood dragon's body, the wood dragon that entangled Shoha became stronger and stronger. It could be foreseen that the final winner of this confrontation between Shoha and the wood dragon will be the wood dragon. And as the caster, Hyojin looked at the scene in front of him with a flash of surprise on his face. He knew that wood release can restrain the tailed beast, but he didn't expect the effect to be so good. The powerful tailed beast is almost a large toy under wood release. No wonder the first generation collected all the tailed beasts so casually from the current situation. As long as the tailed beasts meet the first generation, let alone fight, I'm afraid they won't even have a chance to escape, and the strongest nine tails is no exception. The tailed beast is indeed a toy for the first generation, but for other ninjas, they are complete monsters. The decision of the first generation to distribute tailed beasts to other villages is too reckless. Thinking of this, Hyojin couldn't help but think about the decision of the first generation. In his opinion, instead of distributing tailed beasts, it's better to seal all the tailed beasts in a place where no one knows about. Because in the previous shinobi wars, the tailed beasts completely became the enemy's strength, and as the original owner of these tailed beasts, my village suffered from the tailed beasts. In fact, after the establishment of the shinobi village system, the strength of Mai was reflected in the first generation and Uchiha Madara. When Uchiha Madara faked his death and retired, and after the death of Hashirama, although Konoha's strength is still at the top of the 5 great shinobi villages, it has lost the dominant position it had when Hashirama was alive. In short, the reason why Mai was able to dominate the world back then was because of Hashirama. Without Hashirama, Mai is just the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages. It was the same for the tailed beasts. Other than the first generation, the subsequent generations of Naruto did not have an overwhelming advantage over the tailed beasts. During the Nine Tails Rebellion, 3 generations and 4 generations, both Naruto were helpless against the raging Nine Tails. In the end, 4 generations had to sacrifice themselves to barely defeat the Nine Tails. Such a mistake will not happen to me. Hyojin's gaze gradually turned ice-cold as he looked at the clamoring Shohei. The first generation naively thought that as long as the will of fire could be passed down, Mai would be able to prosper forever. However, the fact proved that the will of fire alone is not enough. One must have real strength. The first generation's misjudgment of the future situation caused the shinobi world to suffer the destruction of 3 shinobi wars in just a few decades. As the 5th generation, Hyojin must correct this mistake and recover all the tailed beasts in the future. At this time, Hyojin raised his arms again and began to make hand seals. He did not forget that the purpose of this time was to test the limit of the clone body. So even if the Wood Dragon technique had successfully restrained Shohei, he still did not plan to stop. Wood Release, Wood Man technique. After completing the hand seals, Sui Jin let out a loud shout. Rumble, with the activation of his ninjutsu, the earth trembled, and then a 100-meter-tall wooden man that was almost identical to Susanoo rose from the ground and appeared on the island. This Shohei was already restrained by the Wood Dragon, and when he saw the woodman that was even bigger than him, his expression froze, and the ferocious expression on his face gradually turned into surprise. Boom! Accompanied by a whistling sound, the giant woodman slapped Shohei's head, making him dizzy. At the same time, Shizuru, who was unable to move, found that the Konohagakure on his head was also absorbing his chakra, like the Konohagakure. Not only that, but he also found that the woodman seemed to have some kind of sealing power that restrained him. When the woodman slapped his head, he felt that he had lost control of the tailed beast chakra in his body. It's over. Instantly, Shohei was shrouded by a great fear. It was hard enough to deal with a wood dragon, and now there was a woodman that was even more difficult to deal with. Facing this situation, he had no chance of winning. Suddenly, Shohei saw the ninja that used Wood Release in the corner of his eyes started to make hand seals again. Shohei was dumbfounded. At this moment, Hyojin finished making hand seals in the distance and shouted, "Wood Release, world of trees descend." Clatter. Countless trees broke out of the ground and rose crazily. In the blink of an eye, the island that had just been raised by Shohei's air training bullet was immediately covered with green. The trees that grew crazily were not aimless. Many trees entangled Shohei's huge body as if they had a mind of their own. Some branches even directly inserted into Shohei's body and then grew out from the other end. After a while, Shohei's huge body was covered with trees and vines. At this time, Shohei could not even move, let alone struggle. The tailed beast chakra in its body was also being absorbed by the wood dragon, the woodman, and the trees that covered its body, causing the sand that made up its body to collapse. After a few moves, Hyojin leaped onto the woodman's shoulder and looked at Shohei opposite him. At this time, Shohei was no longer as arrogant as before. It looked at Hyojin with its dull eyes filled with fear. It did not expect this inconspicuous ninja to be so terrifying. Hyojin looked distressed. Is it not the limit yet? As he said that, he sighed and began to make hand seals again. Then he shouted, "Would release all cloth bag technique." In an instant, countless huge arms rose from the ground and grabbed Shohei, who was standing firmly. Then they pulled hard and pulled Shohei to the ground. After Shohei fell to the ground, the arms wrapped around Shohei's limbs, tail, and neck, binding it to the ground. Shohei, who fell to the ground, had completely lost the ability to resist. It could not even speak. Hyojin could only sense its emotions through the fear in its eyes. Swoosh! In a flash, Hyojin landed on Shohei's head and kicked Shohei's nose. "Hey, you don't even need to use the tailed beast jade. Are you pretending to be me?" Shohei, who had lost the ability to speak, was completely speechless. At the same time, chakra was being absorbed by the wood dragon, wood man, wood hand, and countless trees. It could not even maintain its form, let alone use the tailed beast jade. Here's the second update. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 11:57. Seeing that Shohei had no resistance at all, Hyojin rubbed his chin and thought to himself, "If that's the case, then I'll continue to practice with the tail. The tailed beast's skin is thick, and it is undoubtedly an excellent target. Other people and things really can't withstand such torture." After making up his mind, Hyojin no longer hesitated and began another round of hand seals in front of Shohei's horrified eyes. He immediately shouted, "Would release, flower tree world descends." Pa! As Hyojin finally put his palms together, a surging chakra surged from his body. Clatter! In an instant, the sea of trees that had stopped growing began to boil again, and countless branches began to sprout and grow, and the trunk quickly became thicker, as if it was inflated. In just a short moment, the entire island was swallowed up by the sea of trees. From a distance, the island looked like a giant tree growing on the sea. Under the lush canopy stood a towering wooden man, and the huge figure of Shoha was completely covered by the green shade. Then, beautiful red buds appeared on the giant branches. Each of these buds was the size of a person, and they were faintly blooming. At this point, Hyojin hurriedly stopped the technique. He knew that as long as he continued to maintain the ninjutsu, these huge buds all over the island would quickly bloom and then emit poisonous pollen. Once a ninja inhales this poisonous pollen, they will immediately fall to the ground. So considering that Aira is in Shoha's body, he chose not to let these buds bloom and release poisonous pollen. Standing on Shoha's head, Hyojin looked around and said, "I didn't expect that even this kind of technique can be used." Flower Tree World Descends is already the top ninjutsu in the conventional wood release, and Hyojin being able to use Flower Tree World Descends means that he has the ability to use all conventional wood release ninjutsu. After a little breath, Hyojin said, "It's time to try the real thousands of hands." Shohei completely lost the will to resist when he saw Hyojin starting to form hand seals again. His arrogance from before was nowhere to be seen. All that was left in his eyes was numbness and sorrow, as he resigned himself to fate. Soon, Hyojin completed the hand seals and shouted, "Would escape true thousand hands." As he shouted, the would escape chakra in his body gushed out like a flood. However, the thousand-armed Buddha did not rise from the ground as he expected. Suijin was slightly surprised by this. Obviously, the wood-release ninjutsu experiment that had been going very smoothly before had some accidents when it came to the Manjikyu. Stopping the pointless consumption of chakra, Hyojin combed through the process of casting the spell and making the hand seals just now. He confirmed that there were no mistakes in any of the steps and that everything was done according to the description on the wood escape secret scroll left behind by the first generation in the secret spell archive of the village. So, he thought to himself, why did it fail? This doubt did not last long. Hyojin had a guess. The Manjikyu was obviously not a normal wood release anymore. One should know that the wooden man in the wooden man technique was about the size of a tailed beast. In front of the Manjikyu, the wooden man was just a tiny dot on the head of the Manjikyu. If the wooden man was tens of meters tall, then the height of the Manjikyu would probably be hundreds of thousands of meters. A normal mountain would be like a small mound in front of the Manjikyu. It could be flattened with 1 foot. This level of ninjutsu, relying on would escape chakra alone, might not be enough. Hyojin suspected that he had to use the immortal technique chakra with natural energy in order to successfully perform the Manjikyu. After all, in the battle between the first generation and Madara Uchiha in the Valley of the End, the first generation also performed the Manjikyu under the immortal mode. After coming to this conclusion, Hyojin began to summarize. There is no doubt that his Yang release clone could perform all the conventional wood release, including the descent of the Flower Tree World. Its strength was close to the normal state of the first generation. But for the Manjikyu, which might need the immortal technique chakra, he had no way to use it for the time being. In other words, without considering the sealing technique, his Yang release clone strength was on par with the normal first generation, but it was inferior to the first generation under the immortal mode. After completing the general wood release ninjutsu, Hyojin did not immediately cancel the wood release he had previously performed. Instead, he coldly glanced at the tailed crane that was bound by layers of trees, as well as the wooden dragon, wooden man, and wooden hand. Now that the crane was completely under his control, it was up to Gaara. Because Gaara's will had been corroded by the crane of the moment, it was in a completely berserk state. Even Hyojin couldn't do anything about it. He could only wait for Gaara to defeat himself and break free from the berserk state. But fortunately, the wooden dragon, wooden man, and wooden hand could absorb the chakra on the crane by themselves, so there was no need for Hyojin to provide additional chakra to maintain it. Therefore, such a stalemate didn't burden Hyojin at all. So, Hyojin sat cross-legged on the crane's face and waited patiently. While waiting, he didn't idle, but naturally evaluated the effect of wood release on the tailed beast. From the current situation, the stronger the wood release that contained the characteristics of the holy tree, the stronger the suppression on the tailed beast. In the original world, when Yamato faced the berserk Naruto, he was trembling. Sometimes he needed to cooperate with the necklace left by Hashirama in order to suppress the berserk Naruto. But once Naruto's tailed beast form reached more than 6 tails, Yamato's would release wouldn't be enough to deal with it. And with the ability of Hyojin's Yang release clone, let alone 9 tails, even if there were 4 or 5-tailed beasts, he would still be able to deal with them easily. If there were more, he might be a little flustered. But no matter what, the tailed beasts were harmless to his Yang release clone, because even if there were 9-tailed beasts, his would release would still be able to fight them. Thinking of this, not only did Hyojin not feel happy, but he also frowned and thought to himself, what is the holy tree? The more he studied, the more he felt the terror of the holy tree. Because just the tailed beast that split from the holy tree and the wood release that contained the characteristics of the holy tree were already so powerful that they could almost dominate the shinobi world. Not to mention that the holy tree could also bear the chakra fruit, which was a magical fruit that could break through the immortal Kekiai net with just 1 bite. And such a powerful holy tree was just a tool used by the Otsutsuki clan to plunder the energy of the planet. It could be seen that the technology of the Otsutsuki clan had reached an exaggerated level. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1158. Moreover, the Otsutsuki clan's technique of controlling the sacred tree is already very perfect. Thinking of the various suppressive effects of the Otsutsuki clan's bloodline on the sacred tree, Hyojin's face became more and more solemn. The Otsutsuki clan's Rinnegan could easily control tailed beasts and the outer path demon statue, and the power of the bloodline that contained the characteristics of the sacred tree could easily suppress the tailed beasts. Even if the purity of the bloodline had regressed to the level of wood release and Sharingan, they could still play with the tailed beasts derived from the sacred tree. Wood release could easily bind and seal the tailed beasts and absorb their chakra. Even if they could not become a Jinchuriki, they could still turn the tailed beasts into their own batteries. The Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique could control tailed beasts, and the complete Susanoo could also absorb the power of the tailed beasts and combine them into mighty Susanoo, which would increase both its power and endurance. In other words, whether it was the Otsutsuki clan's body that represented Yang release or the pupil technique that represented Yin release, they had the ability to suppress the sacred tree and its derivatives. Moreover, this kind of suppression was innate. As long as the bloodline was pure enough, there was no need to learn or practice at all. This meant that the Otsutsuki clan had integrated the method of suppressing the sacred tree into their bloodline, making these methods instinctive. This was undoubtedly a proof of the maturity of the technique, which meant that the Otsutsuki clan had a clear understanding of the characteristics of the sacred tree. Therefore, there was no doubt that the Otsutsuki clan had more than 1 sacred tree in their hands. In other words, the Otsutsuki clan definitely had more than 1 10-tailed beast. Rumble. At this moment, the huge guardian crane under Sujin's body suddenly trembled. Then, the quicksand that made up the crane's body collapsed in large pieces. In the blink of an eye, the huge crane turned into a pile of sand, and Gaara's figure appeared from the pile of sand. You can't hold on anymore? Hyojin quickly gathered his thoughts and came to Gaara's side in a flash. Gaara shook his head and climbed out of the sand. He immediately said to Hyojin with a guilty look, "Sir, I'm sorry. I was suppressed by the crane just now." Hyojin looked Gaara up and down before sighing softly. There was no doubt that I, Aylar, was unable to conquer my inner demons. The moment I came into contact with the Shohi, I was utterly defeated. However, if one were to think about it carefully, this was actually quite normal. That was because Gaara's personality had changed greatly in the original timeline. He had become addicted to killing, and his personality had become extremely cruel. Although such an extreme personality was not good, it was tenacious and self-centered enough to help him resist the erosion of the guardian crane. In this world, due to Hyojin's timely intervention, Gaara's temperament did not change drastically. Moreover, Hyojin had long since sealed the show he in his body, creating a safe and warm environment for him to grow. As a result, although Gaara's growth was smooth, he lost the courage and experience to face the show he directly. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin asked, "Do you still dare to face Shoha?" Aiello was a little hesitant, but finally nodded. The show had brought too many terrifying memories to Gaara's childhood. However, compared to the terror of the show, he was even more unwilling to see Hyojin disappointed. Now is its weakest moment. It's also the best time for you to defeat it. After a pause, Hyojin continued, "Gaara, you must remember that the more you don't want to face something, the more you can't run away from it. That's because it's in your body, and you can't run away." The Shohi that had just escaped had absorbed a large amount of chakra from Hyojin's would escape. In the end, it could not even maintain its form. This meant that the Shohi was in an extremely weak state. Gaara knew that he had to end things with the Shohi, so he immediately asked, "Sir, what do you want me to do?" Hyojin said, "It's very simple. Take advantage of this opportunity to take away the Shohi's tailed beast's power." Naruto's trial on the Cloud Turtle Island this time gave Hyojin an inspiration. Since the tailed beast was unwilling to get along with him, then he would first take away the tailed beast's power in the spiritual world. When the human's Jinchuriki obtained the tailed beast's power and was in an advantageous position in the confrontation, then he would slowly reform the tailed beast. With that said, Hyojin stretched out his hand towards Gaara and gently pressed it on Gaara's forehead. "Relax your mind. I'm going to use the giant Tenseigan's power to invade your spiritual world now." "Yes." Gaara quickly took a deep breath. As soon as his voice fell, Gaara found that everything in front of him had changed. It was no longer the green island, but the dark cave that represented fear in his childhood. Just when Gaara was at a loss, Hyojin's voice sounded in his ears. "Look, Shohi is over there." Gaara turned his head and saw that Hyojin had also followed him into his spiritual world. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief, then looked in the direction Hyojin was pointing and found that in another cave in the distance, Shohi was furious and shouting. Gaara's pupil shrank, and he said in surprise, "The seal on its body is gone." Hyojin said lightly, "Don't worry, I was the one who unlocked it." Before leaving the village, Hyojin had read the report submitted by Kakashi and Naruto. He knew that before the human's Jinchuriki snatched the tailed beast's power in the spiritual world, the seal on the tailed beast must be completely released. Only in this way can the tailed beast's power be successfully taken away. Hyojin's calmness infected Gaara. He quickly calmed down and walked towards Shohi, who was not restrained and could move freely. "Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! I'm going to kill all of you! Kill all of you!" As he got closer, Shohi's ferocious roar could be heard. Kuroto glanced at Gaara worriedly, only to find that not only did Gaara not slow down, he even sped up his pace, and as he walked, he even started running towards Shoja. Kuroto chuckled softly, and his figure flickered as he followed behind. Shohi, who was not sealed, also noticed Gaara approaching it. Madness and malevolence appeared on its face as it laughed strangely. "Ha ha! Watch, I'm going to tear you apart." Shohi noticed Hyojin, who was following Gaara halfway through its sentence. In an instant, its clamor came to an abrupt halt, and the madness and malevolence on its face vanished. Instead, it was replaced by shock and fear. It retreated subconsciously and said, "How did you get in?" Hyojin smiled and said, "Why? Am I not welcome here? Didn't we have a good time just now?" "A good time." Shohi looked terrified and shouted, "Damn it, don't come any closer." "I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I'd like to thank all the students who gifted me today. Thank you, everyone." Chapter 11:59. Hyojin smiled when he saw He retreating in fear. Then he instructed Gaara, "Do it. Use your chakra to pull out its tailed beast power. As long as you can fuse with the tailed beast power, it'll be a success." Gaara nodded and activated his chakra without hesitation. In a split second, the sand in the cave gathered together and formed into the shape of an arm. It slowly reached out towards the enormous crane. Shohei immediately realized Gaara's plan when it saw Gaara's chakra arm reaching out to it. It roared hysterically, "This damned ant! How dare you try to steal my power? I'm going to tear you into pieces." Shohei's loud roar reverberated in the cave and caused the cave to rumble. At the same time, a huge sand wave formed around it. It surged towards Gaara's chakra arm that was made of sand with a force that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Hyojin immediately formed a hand seal when he saw this. Would release cloth sack technique. Rumble. In an instant, huge wooden hands rose from the ground and grabbed Shohei's limbs, tail, and neck. Just like before, Shohei was pulled to the ground. As Shohei was restrained by wood release, the sand wave that was attacking Gaara slowed down and eventually scattered to the ground. After a while, Gaara's chakra arm finally touched Shizuki's body and tore the tailed beast's power out of Shizuki's body, and then dragged the tailed beast's power. "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." Shohei, who was restrained by wood release, could not stop cursing when it felt its tailed beast power being dragged out of its body. There was no doubt that Shohei could no longer stop Gaara from dragging its tailed beast power. Under normal circumstances, Gaara did not have the ability to fight Shohei. Shohei did not even need to use any strength to easily corrode Gaara's will. However, Shohei had lost a large amount of chakra after being beaten up by Hyojin and was in a weakened state. Moreover, Hyojin had invaded Gaara's spiritual world and used wood release to suppress it. Therefore, it was completely at Gaara's mercy. Therefore, the dragging process did not last for too long. Through Gaara's chakra arm, he successfully absorbed Shohei's tailed beast power into his body and began to fuse with it. Seeing that Gaara had succeeded, Hyojin wasted no time. He immediately formed a hand seal and shouted, "For symbol seal, seal." With the activation of Seal Jutsu, a series of ink-colored Seal Jutsu surged from all directions towards Shizuki, who was pulled to the ground, gradually replacing the wood release that imprisoned Shizuki, trapping Shizuki in 3 layers of wood release and 3 layers of wood release. After confirming that Shohei was restrained by the 4-symbol seal, Hyojin removed wood release and looked at Gaara. Unlike Naruto, who had almost instantly fused with the tailed beast power, Gaara's speed of fusing with the tailed beast power was much slower. This was obviously because Gaara's chakra amount could not be compared to Naruto, who was from the Maelstrom clan. The more chakra amount one had, the easier it was to fuse with the tailed beast power. Hyojin did not rush him. Instead, he stood quietly and waited. After about 10 minutes, Gaara opened his eyes and said, "Sir, I did it." And Machem. Nodding, Hyojin exited Gaara's spiritual world. Then he removed all the wood release ninjutsu that was released on the island. For a while, the wood dragon, wood man, and wood hand on the island gradually dissipated. The lush forest caused by the descent of the flower tree world has declined a lot because of the removal of the ninjutsu. But because the trees have been sprouted, the entire island is still covered with green leaves. Of course, without the support of wood release chakra, it is obviously impossible to maintain this dense forest for a long time. So with the passage of time, this forest will inevitably wither. And in the end, how much of it can be preserved depends on how many trees the natural environment of this island can support. Ninjutsu can't resist nature for a long time. Just as Hyojin was dealing with the wood release on the island, Gaara also exited his spiritual world and felt the power of the tailed beast that he had just taken from the crane. After a while, Hyojin came over and asked, "Can you enter the tailed beast chakra mode?" Hearing Kuroto's words, Gaara hurriedly tried to activate the tailed beast state, and in an instant, a tailed beast chakra escaped from his body and formed a tailed beast coat that wrapped around his body. Hyojin frowned slightly. This state is at most a tailed beast, and it is not comparable to Naruto's Nine Tails Chakra Mode. Gaara said, "Sir, it seems that this is all I can do." After pondering for a while, Hyojin said, "It seems that the Tailed Beast Chakra Mode is exclusive to Nine Tails." In fact, Kuroto has also speculated in this regard before, because Cloud Village's Hachibi's Jinchuriki and Nibi's Jinchuriki Yujito are both perfect Jinchuriki who have passed the trial of Giant Turtle Island. But the two of them could only perfectly control the tailed beasts in their bodies, and did not create any Eight Tails Chakra Mode or Two Tails Chakra Mode. Therefore, this Chakra Mode that uses the power of the tailed beasts is very likely to be exclusive to Nine Tails. From this point, it also shows that Nine Tails is the most special of all tailed beasts. After thinking about this, Hyojin explained to Gaara, "Now, it is barely a perfect Jinchuriki, and you could transform into a tailed beast at will without worrying about the risk of going berserk. But if you want to further improve your strength and have more tailed beast power, you must communicate with the Shoha and reach an understanding with each other. Only with the support of the Shoha can you be considered a perfect Jinchuriki in the true sense." "Yes," Gaara nodded. Hyojin thought for a while and then said, "The Shoha's tailed beast chakra includes the magnetic release chakra. As long as you practice hard, it should not be difficult to master the magnetic release through the Shoha's tailed beast power. Therefore, the next step is to focus on the development of the magnetic release." Gaara listened carefully. "Yes." Hyojin patted Gaara's shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't be too nervous. As long as you are strong enough, the tailed beasts are actually quite easy to deal with. Therefore, focus on improving yourself. There is no need to rush to communicate with the Shoha. Just beat it up a few times from time to time, and it will slowly understand." Gaara had a surprised look on his face. When you say communicate, do you mean beat it up?" Here's the first update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1160. In the face of Gaara's doubts, Hyojin said with a matter-of-fact expression, "If you can't beat it, then why should it listen to you? If you can't even talk to it on an equal footing, then how can you talk about mutual understanding?" "I understand." Guy Alo nodded, not really understanding. Kuroto explained with a smile, "Tailed beasts have an almost eternal lifespan and strength far beyond that of an ordinary person, which means that they won't easily take us ninjas seriously. So showing strength is the basis of dialogue. You will slowly understand this in the future." After a few more words, Hyojin sent Gaara back to the air fortress. Now that Gaara has mastered the power of the tailed beast of the tailed crane, he can enter the tailed beast form without any restrictions and use all the abilities of the tailed crane. Among all the tailed beasts, although the tailed crane has the least amount of chakra, it is proficient in magnetic release and seal. As long as it is used properly, its combat effectiveness is very considerable. Therefore, as long as Gaara can use the power of the tailed beast of the tailed crane and master the ability to control the golden sand like his father, the 4 generations of Kazekage, then Hyojin will make a fortune. No, then Gaara will officially enter the Kage level. If Gaara can master the seal of the tailed crane, then he will be considered as good among all the Kage level ninjas, at least much stronger than him in the original time and space. Even in the face of the Edo Tensei Uchiha, he won't be unable to help. Putting aside the matter of Gaara, Hyojin continued to focus on his Kekiai Genkai ritual. Through some experiments on the island just now, he has confirmed that the strength of the clone body is completely in line with the requirements of the ritual, so there is no need to spend extra effort to develop it. However, the step of the spirit body and the clone body can't be skipped. Kuroto needs to stay in the clone body for several months in order to improve the compatibility between the spirit and the clone body bit by bit and eliminate the feeling of awkwardness between the clone body and his own. And taking advantage of this period of time, Kuroto can visit the shinobi world to find a suitable place for the ritual and make all the preparations before the ritual. After making up his mind, Hyojin gave a few instructions to Xiong Li and Gaara who were guarding the Sky Fortress. Without taking a break, he rode in the young escape clone and left the Sky Fortress. Because it was a secret search, he didn't wear the uniform of Amatsuki this time in order not to attract attention, but just a simple black cloak. His face was covered with bandages, and his whole face was hidden under the hood. He also carried a low-quality katana on his back, giving him the appearance of a wandering samurai. And this kind of wandering samurai is very common in the shinobi world. Bandits and robbers, bodyguards of wealthy merchants, caravan guards, and so on are almost all composed of wandering samurai with varying strength. After all, there is no need to hire such expensive ninjas for a long time in general business activities. After crossing the vast sea and landing on the coast of the Land of Fire, Hyojin stopped on a cliff and took out an exquisite map from the ninja bag around his waist and spread it on the ground. The first thing to do is to hide the location of the ritual. After all, safety is the most important thing. In the past, if the Danzo got rid of Hyojin and Orochimaru and secretly carried out the final step of the ritual, although it would be technically risky, at least he didn't have to worry about the ritual being destroyed. Therefore, with the lesson learned from the Danzo, Hyojin naturally won't allow his ritual to be disturbed. During the ritual, the chakra fluctuations should be very violent. Even if a barrier is arranged in advance, it will be difficult to shield the perception of perceptual ninjas. Therefore, the location of the ritual can't be near a shinobi village, a large town, or a military stronghold. Soon, Hyojin drew a lot of forbidden areas on the map. Without exception, all of these forbidden areas are guarded by a large number of ninjas, including not only Mai, but also the other 4 major shinobi villages, as well as Kusanagi, Takagunen, and other small shinobi villages. The map in Hyojin's hand is not simple. The information on it is collected little by little, using his identity as Naruto and the power of Amatsuki. It can be said that it is the most detailed and accurate map in the shinobi world. It is a top secret among top secrets. After eliminating all the dangerous areas one by one, there's still more than 90% of the blank areas on the map for him to choose from. After all, there are not many ninjas in the shinobi world. They are scattered in various villages and countries, so the number of ninjas is relatively small. The attributes of my main body and the 6 clones are roughly balanced. Only the fire clone is slightly weaker. Therefore, the ritual should be carried out in a place with a higher temperature. Although the fire clone has recently mastered the new bloodline elimination, the proportion of in-release chakra in the purple flame is very high. It is almost the same as the fire release chakra. Therefore, in terms of the strength of the main attribute chakra, the fire clone is still the weakest among all the clones. In order to make up for this weakness, it is necessary to choose a place with a higher temperature to carry out the ritual. However, the shortcoming of the fire clone is not too fatal. Therefore, Hyojin does not need to be like Danzo, who limited the ritual to a relatively special area, such as a volcano cave. He can choose a relatively high temperature or choose a time period, such as noon, to carry out the ritual. Thinking of this, Hyojin's gaze moved to the Country of Wind at the bottom of the map. 95% of the territory of the Country of Wind is desert, and the suitable rivers and oases occupy less than 5% of the territory. Therefore, as long as he knows the military deployment of the Sand Crypsis village, it is very easy to avoid the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis in the Country of Wind. After all, there's a large area in the Country of Wind that is uninhabited. Some large deserts, even the ninjas of the Sand Crypsis dare not set foot in. The temperature is high and the people are rarely seen. The endless desert in the Country of Wind obviously meets these 2 requirements of Hyojin. With a thought, Hyojin put away the map and directly went along the coastline to the Country of Wind. After a week of searching, Suijin roughly delineated 7 ritual sites in the territory of the Land of Wind. These 7 sites are all located in the depths of the desert, and the nearest town is at least hundreds of kilometers away. Even if the ritual site is earth-shattering, it will be difficult to attract the attention of others. In addition, the temperature of these sites is extremely high at noon, which meets the requirements of Hyojin's ritual. It can slightly strengthen the fire clone through the environment, so that the balance between the various chakra attributes is more stable. Here is the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1161. Ho ho! The whistling sound produced by the sandstorm continued to echo in his ears, and his vision was dim, as if the boundary between heaven and earth was blurred, making people suddenly lose the concept of time, direction, and so on. Walking in such a harsh environment, even a strong person like Hyojin felt a little uncomfortable. If it weren't for the giant Tenseigan in the distant sky fortress that has been positioning the direction for him, even if he has Byakugan, he would probably be lost in this sand sea. It's really a dangerous place. Hyojin, standing on a sand dune, couldn't help but feel emotional. It had been a full month and a half since he had decided on the 7 locations for the ceremony. During this time, he had visited all 7 locations and inspected them one by one. In the end, he eliminated the other 6 locations and chose the last one in front of him. Like the other alternative sites, this 7th alternative site is also a continuous sand sea, but it is more remote and more special. It is special because the ground under this sand sea is very strong. Even sandworms that could travel freely in the sea of sand would find it difficult to drill through the hard ground. Therefore, not only was this sea of sand deserted, but even creatures like sandworms rarely set foot in it. It was truly a forbidden zone for life. Moreover, Hyojin also consulted some literature materials in the Country of Wind and confirmed that this sand sea has no name and there is no history of human activity. Byakugan open. Walking to a high vantage point, Kuroto once again activated Byakugan and carefully observed the surroundings. The extremely harsh environment has advantages and disadvantages for him. The advantage is naturally conducive to confidentiality and is not easy to be disturbed by the enemy. But the disadvantage is also obvious. In this harsh environment, if he wants to successfully complete the ritual, various protective enchantments are essential. The cost of arranging the ritual alone is huge. If you include various enchantments to prevent wind and sand on the periphery, it will be very difficult to control the cost. Therefore, Hyojin must choose a suitable place, otherwise his budget will explode. Fortunately, after this period of field investigation, he roughly grasped the law of sandstorms in this sand sea, knew which areas in the sand sea are less affected by sandstorms, and knew when the power of sandstorms will weaken. Not long after, Kuroto returned to the temporary camp he had set up. It was said to be a camp, but in fact, it was a 2-story building built by Hyojin using the ninjutsu 4 Pillars clan in the desert. After stepping into the house, he opened his mask and spat out some fine sand from his mouth. Then, while drinking some water, he carefully made various notes on the map. This is it. As he spoke, Hyojin heavily tapped on the map. The location he had decided on was located in the center of the desert. Not only was it very open, but it was also not on the wind belt. There were about 3 hours of free time every day, and it would not be disturbed by the sandstorm. After confirming the location, Hyojin immediately planned the ritual according to the map. He had already thought about the preparation for the main part of the ritual. Now, he only needed to use the plan that he had thought about before. As for the other preparations, according to the external environment, such as the setting up of various enchantments, he needed to spend more time thinking about it. Because these were uncertain before the actual ritual location was finalized, he did not have a plan before. The ritual needs at least a radius of 100 meters, so the enchantment can't be placed too close. That might interfere with the ritual. The windproof enchantment is on the inside, and the perception-blocking enchantment is on the outside. Considering the conduction law of chakra, the perception-blocking enchantment must be placed in a higher position. Looking at the layout planned on the map, Hyojin slightly furrowed his brows. He had almost prepared the main part of the ritual before the Akatsuki attacked. Even if the ritual location was in the harsh environment of the desert, the budget would at most increase by a few tens of millions. However, the cost of the enchantment was a little beyond his expectations. Because of the range and the sandstorm, not only did the enchantment need 2 layers this time, but it also needed a larger area, which caused the budget to increase exponentially. Even if Hyojin chose to use Xiang Yu's black rod as the main material for the enchantment, the cost of 2 layers of enchantment would probably be more than a few hundred million. Hyojin said emotionally, "No wonder even some ninja villages can't maintain the cost of the enchantment. A large-scale enchantment is basically burning money. I'm afraid only the wealthy might can afford it." Although it was painful to spend so much money, Hyojin also understood that it was necessary for the ritual to go smoothly. Moreover, he had already thought about the source of the cost. After planning everything, Hyojin stayed in the desert for another half a month to further familiarize himself with the environment of the desert. Then, he quietly returned to the Sky Fortress. After more than 2 months of running around, not only did he find a suitable place for the ritual, but during the long stay in the desert, his spirit body and the Yang-released clone body also became more and more compatible. After a little exercise in the practice field, Hyojin thought, the compatibility should be enough. The characteristics of the divine tree are really amazing. When his spirit body entered the Yang-released clone body for the first time, he had a very comfortable feeling. This undoubtedly shows that the Yang release chakra that contains the characteristics of the divine tree also has the ability to nourish the soul of the Yin release chakra. And this is probably one of the reasons why the Hashirama cell transplant can restore the lost Manjiki Sharingan. Then, Kuroda went to the laboratory, changed back to his Yin release clone body, and put the fully developed Yang release clone body into the large nutrition tank. Then, looking at the clone body soaked in the large nutrition tank, Hyojin muttered to himself, "At first, I thought that the clone body would be the most difficult to develop. I didn't expect things to go so smoothly." Thinking about it, such a result is actually quite normal. After experiencing the cloning and development of the first 5 clones, by the time it is the turn of the 6th clone, even a fool would have accumulated enough experience and skills. Therefore, the Yang release clone body is indeed the most difficult to clone and develop in theory. There's no doubt about this, but the current Hyojin is no longer the rookie who developed the water release clone. After calming down his mood, Hyojin slowly left the laboratory, then found Xiang Lin and Gaara and asked about Sasuke's situation during this period of time. Xiang Lin quickly replied, "My lord, Sasuke Uchiha has been staying in his activity area during this period of time, except for a few attempts to perceive the area outside the activity area. There has been no other abnormal behavior." "Oh, so obedient?" Hyojin was a little surprised and asked, "How is the fusion of his pupil power going?" "I'm asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes." Chapter 1162. Xiang Lin seriously recalled for a moment before replying. "My lord, in the first month, his ocular powers grew by a large margin, and there were changes almost every day. After that, this increase began to slowly slow down. In the last week or 2, I could no longer feel his ocular powers growing." Hyojin nodded. Xiang Li had a perception secret skill called Kagura's Mind Eye. Under her careful observation, most of the changes in Sasuke's pupil power would not be able to hide from her, so her report was trustworthy. From Xiang Lin's report, it was obvious that Sasuke's fusion with his pupil powers was almost complete. "Looks like it's much faster than expected. According to the degree of pupillary power consumption of the 2 pairs of Manjiki Sharingan before the operation, Kuroda predicted that it may take 3 to 4 months for Sasuke to complete the fusion of pupillary power. But now, it seems that in just over 2 months, Sasuke is about to complete the fusion of the eternal Manjiki Sharingan." Then, Hyojin added, he then asked Gaara, "How's the cultivation of the magnetic escape going?" With a guilty expression on his face, Gaara said in slight embarrassment, "I'm sorry. I haven't mastered the magnetic escape technique yet." Hyojin smiled and comforted, "It's only been 2 months. You don't have to feel too burdened." For ordinary ninjas, the development of Kekkei Genkai is extremely difficult. For example, second-generation Naruto, who has developed countless secret and forbidden techniques in his life, has not been able to master his brother's wood release. Third-generation Naruto, who is known as the Doctor of Ninjutsu, has also not been able to develop any Kekkei Genkai. Moreover, among all the blood limit boundaries, the difficulty of cultivating the magnetic escape is one of the highest. No matter how talented I, Ayler, am, it is unrealistic for me to master the magnetic escape in just 2 months. It could be said that if Hyojin did not accidentally obtain the wind escape clone that showed signs of atavism, he would not have been able to master the magnetic escape so easily. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin ordered, "Arao, come with me." After saying that, Hyojin led Galo back to the laboratory. In the lab, Hyojin said to Gaara, "Magnet release is a fusion of the wind element chakra and the lightning element chakra. These two elements of chakra are unstable in form and very difficult to control. If you were to figure it out yourself, you might need a lot of time to make mistakes bit by bit. That's why I'm borrowing your body to demonstrate it to you so that you can feel it." Yes, Gaara knew about Hyojin's abilities, so he didn't need Hyojin to explain any further and took the initiative to relax. At this time, Hyojin quickly printed hand seals and immediately used soul descent technique to enter Gaara's body. Because Gaara took the initiative to relax his mind and body without the slightest resistance, Hyojin easily took over Gaara's body and felt the flow of chakra in his body. Gaara's body is undoubtedly very suitable for practicing magnet release. This is not only because he is a Jinchuriki, but also because his father, 4 generations of Kazekage, was a Kekkei Genkai ninja, so his body contains the bloodline to practice magnet release. It's just that magnet release is very difficult to master. So even if one has the bloodline to practice magnet release, the number of ninjas who can truly master magnet release is very rare. For example, Gaara's brother and sister, Shoju and Kankuro, have not been able to master their father's magnet release. After familiarizing himself with Gaara's body and Gaara's chakra characteristics, Hyojin used his rich experience in using magnet release and began to experiment with magnet release. With a series of rapid hand seals, Hyojin, who was controlling Gaara's body, suddenly stretched out his right hand toward a row of surgical instruments on the distant operating table. In an instant, the surgical instruments on the tray issued a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds. Success! The corner of Hyojin's mouth rose. There is no doubt that his first attempt to control Gaara's body has achieved very good results. Although he was unable to absorb the metal instruments on the tray with magnet release chakra, he still succeeded in affecting the metal instruments. It must be known that not every magnet release ninja can use magnet release on a large scale like the 3 generations of Kazekage and 4 generations of Kazekage. There was a magnet release ninja named Troy who could only attach magnet release chakra to a shuriken and control the shuriken through magnetism. Hyojin being able to do this on his first attempt is already very amazing. After a few more attempts, Hyojin successfully controlled the various metal instruments in the operating room and asked Gaara, "Do you feel it?" Gaara's consciousness replied, "Well, I seem to understand a little bit." Hearing this, Hyojin withdrew from Gaara's body and returned to his release body. The key to magnet release lies in the mutual stimulation of wind chakra and lightning chakra. How to do it? How to maintain it? I have already demonstrated it to you just now. The rest is up to you to comprehend it yourself. Hyojin, who has the soul descent technique, can be said to be the best teacher in the current shinobi world, because he can directly enter the body of a student and achieve the true meaning of teaching by example. And this kind of physical teaching is much more efficient than teaching in the classroom or on the practice field. Of course, this kind of teaching will also stifle the student's ability to explore and make independent judgments, so it can't be abused. After sending Gaara back to his room to practice on his own, Hyojin thought for a while and put his soul into the water clone that performed the transplant operation on Sasuke, and then walked toward Sasuke's room. Originally, Kuroto was going to be busy with other things, But now that he found that Sasuke's pupil fusion has entered the final stage, he naturally has to go and take a look. After a while, Hyojin arrived at Sasuke's living area. Sasuke, who was lying on the bed, heard the footsteps approaching and quickly came out to greet them. "Who is it?" Hyojin said. "It's me." "Oh." Faintly responding, Sasuke couldn't hide the disappointment on his face. Actually, there was no need for Hyojin to answer. Sasuke should have sensed the chakra fluctuations on Hyojin's body and knew that the person who had come was the God's organization, Suijin, who had performed the transplant operation on him. As Hyojin picked up Sasuke's notebook, he said casually, "You seem a little disappointed." Sasuke asked, "It's been more than 2 months. Why hasn't Sensei come to see me even once?" "She's out on a mission." After casually brushing off Sasuke, Hyojin seriously looked at Sasuke's diary for the past 2 months. "Here's the second update. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to all the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone." Chapter 1163. As Hyojin expected, Sasuke obediently recorded the feelings of the ocular fusion in the past 2 months in detail, even including many doubts and speculations about the process of ocular fusion. Looking through the diary, Hyojin's expression gradually became solemn. From Sasuke's diary, it is obvious that the ocular fusion between the Manjikyu Sharingan has many similarities with gene fusion. I'm afraid that this is the reason why it can only be done by blood relatives. After a pause, Hyojin continued. Although this method is primitive, it is indeed the simplest way to sublimate the bloodline. There is no doubt that this method of transplanting the Manjikyu Sharingan between blood relatives is not only the fusion of ocular power, but also the fusion of bloodline. This is a method of bloodline fusion to trace back the bloodline of the Otsutsuki clan, which has been diluted over the generations, so that the bloodline of the fused person is closer to the ancestor. In other words, even if the fusion of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, which is the peak power of the shinobi world, is successful, it only regains part of the ancestor's power. Sasuke asked at this time, "When can I remove the bandage?" Hyojin continued to read Sasuke's diary and replied, "As long as the fusion of ocular power is completed, you can naturally remove the bandage. You don't need to ask me." Sasuke said, "In the last 2 weeks, the growth of the ocular power has begun to slow down. Does this mean that I am about to succeed?" "What did you say?" Hyojin glanced at Sasuke in surprise. Xiangli just reported to him that Sasuke's ocular power has not increased in the last 2 weeks. But Sasuke said that the growth of the ocular power has only slowed down recently. This is obviously a misjudgment. Sasuke crossed his arms and said proudly, "I know that some of you have been secretly spying on me, but I am not the same as before. Do you think I will not notice such spying?" "You found out." Kuroto didn't care about it and just smiled. Kuroto had some doubts before. Sasuke's pupil fusion has already been completed, so why hasn't the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan been completed? Only now did he realize that this kid was just pretending. This was most likely because Xianglin didn't view Sasuke as an enemy after he brought him back to the Sky Fortress. That was why he didn't conceal his presence when he tried to sense Xianglin's presence. As Sasuke's ocular powers fused with Xianglin's, his senses naturally increased by a lot. That was why he was able to detect Xianglin's prying and disguise himself accordingly to deceive Xianglin's senses. Closing Sasuke's diary, Hyojin speculated. If this is the case, the fusion of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan may be completed within a week. 1 more week. Sasuke frowned. Being blind for more than 2 months had worn down much of his patience. Seeing Sasuke's impatience, Hyojin said, "There's only one last step left. I guess you don't want to make any mistakes at this last moment, right?" Sasuke gently nodded. "I understand." Hyojin immediately turned around and walked out. As he walked, he said, "I'll come back in a week for the final inspection. If there are no problems, you can return to Mai." Sasuke didn't say anything. He silently lay back on the bed and continued to wait patiently. In the following week, because Sasuke could complete the fusion of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan at any time, Hyojin didn't leave the Sky Fortress again. Instead, he focused on practicing the Hashiman Dungeon in the training field of the Sky Fortress. Whoosh, 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 with the rapid flashing of the figure, a lot of air waves were generated in the training field out of thin air. These air waves overlapped and spread around like a storm. If it weren't for the sealing techniques engraved on the four walls of the training field, ordinary brick walls might not be able to withstand these layers of air waves. After a long time, the figure slowed down and revealed the appearance of Hyojin. Phew! After a light breath, Hyojin, who was sweating profusely, replenished his water while thinking about how to optimize the training method. Now that all 6 clones needed for the ceremony had been cloned and developed, the only thing left was to fill the Een seal of the Een body with chakra and cultivate the Hashiman Dungeon to the highest realm so that he could burst out all his potential in the ceremony. Then, he could officially start the ceremony. And the previous intermittent training had allowed him to cultivate the 6th gate of the Hashiman Dungeon, the Gate of View, so now he was trying to break through the 7th gate, the Gate of Wonder. Practicing the Hashiman Dungeon, a secret technique of the Iron Fist school, the stronger the physique, the better the foundation of physical techniques, and the more understanding of the human body structure, the less difficult it would be to practice. Coincidentally, he had all 3 of these points. The current Hyojin's physique was no longer what it used to be. In addition, he also cultivated the secret technique of Een seal that could maintain the vitality of the body. So even if he was not as good as Nagato's physique, his physique was far better than the average ninja in the ninja world. He was a rare character. Not to mention physical techniques, in this aspect, Hyojin had never slacked off, and he didn't have any sectarian bias in his heart. Whether it was soft fist, iron fist, or even some swordsmanship, sword techniques, and other schools of ninjutsu, he more or less dabbled in all of them. He could be regarded as a master of ninjutsu in the ninja world. As for the human body structure, in the current ninja world, except for Orochimaru, who dared to transform his own human body, he may be slightly stronger than Hyojin. Perhaps even Tsunade Haim, the #1 medical ninjutsu, can't compare with Hyojin in this aspect. In fact, if he hadn't been busy developing clones over the years, he might have already conquered the Hashiman Dungeon. And now, he only needs to conquer the 7th gate of the Hashiman Dungeon, the Gate of Wonder, because once he masters the 7th gate, the Hashiman Dungeon can basically be declared to have been conquered. After all, the 8th gate, the Gate of Death, belongs to the taboo of death. Before actually opening the Gate of Death, no one can say for sure whether they can open this checkpoint of burning their life, so there's no such thing as practicing opening the Gate of Death in the practice field. Under normal circumstances, once a cultivator conquers the 7th gate, the Gate of Wonder, they have the ability to break through the 8th gate, the Gate of Death. As for whether or not they can successfully open the 8th gate, it depends on whether the cultivator's foundation is solid enough, and whether or not their willpower is strong enough. Like Dai and Metke, they have trained their bodies to the extreme over the years, so they have the confidence and ability to open the final Gate of Death. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1164. Bang! With a low muffled sound, the huge black iron sand shield seemed to explode from the inside. The entire shield exploded, and the fine black iron sand splattered all over the field. At this time, Hyojin's figure flashed, and he retracted his fist while gasping for breath. At the same time, the mist that lingered around his body, which was a mixture of sweat and chakra, also began to dissipate as he stopped moving. After a while, Hyojin's face darkened as he caught his breath. Still lacking a little, the 6th gate, View Gate, and the 7th gate, Alarm Gate, seemed to be separated by only one gate, but in fact the difference between the two was huge. It could be said to be an invisible threshold in the 8 inner hidden gates. Hyojin had mastered the 6th gate, View Gate, for a while, but every time he tried to break through the 7th gate, Alarm Gate, he always seemed to be lacking something, causing him to fail at the last moment. Is it because my foundation is not enough, or I lack some kind of technique? Hyojin thought to himself. After becoming Naruto, he could access any information in Mai's archive, so he had secretly copied a copy of the secret technique scroll of the 8 inner hidden gates. Therefore, he did not ask Ai for any additional training after that. In his opinion, he was a body technique master, and he had the secret technique scroll of the 8 inner hidden gates, so there should be no obstacles for him to practice the 8 inner hidden gates on his own. The result was just as he expected. After that, the training went smoothly. Even if it was only intermittent training, he successfully opened the 6th gate, View Gate. However, the 7th gate, Alarm Gate, seemed to be a little special. He tried various methods, but he could not break through. Realizing that he did not have much chakra left, Hyojin slowly walked to a cubicle on the side of the training field that looked like a locker room. He took off his clothes and slowly opened his arms. In an instant, the Type 3 biological armor he placed in the compartment automatically covered his body. In order to avoid the dilemma of not having a spare replacement after Xiang Yu's Type 3 biological armor was overloaded and scrapped, Hyojin conveniently created 4 brand new Type 3 biological armors when he was developing the Yang escape clones. 2 of them were given to Xiang Li, and he kept the other 2 for himself. The Type 3 biological armor that he had modified did not only have the ability to isolate perception, but its own chakra supply ability had also been greatly improved. It was equivalent to an external chakra battery. During this time, not only was Hyojin diligently practicing the 8 inner hidden gates, but he was also constantly pouring chakra into the Yin seal between his eyebrows. Therefore, he was severely lacking in chakra. Therefore, when he wasn't practicing, he would use the Type 3 biological armor to quickly restore chakra. This way, he could speed up the process of filling up the Yin seal and maintain his stamina to break through the 7th gate of wonder for a longer period of time. Of course, this was not without a price. For a long time, the high-intensity chakra supply would quickly make the cell tissues of the Type 3 biological armor lose their activity. Therefore, Hyojin had to spend a lot of nutrient solution to warm the Type 3 biological armor and use the 2 sets of Type 3 biological armor in turn to ensure that the Type 3 biological armor would not be overloaded and scrapped. Consuming a lot of expensive nutrient solution, although it was very extravagant, if it could save time, it was worth it for Hyojin. After putting on the Type 3 biological armor, Hyojin did not waste any time. He directly walked out of the compartment and ordered the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets in the practice field continue. After receiving Hyojin's order, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets immediately launched the magnetic release and gathered the scattered black iron sand again, forming a huge black iron shield with a length and width of 4 meters and a thickness of 2 meters. In the face of this black iron shield that had been reinforced by the magnetic release chakra, Hyojin took a deep breath and instantly opened the 8 inner hidden gates and opened the 6th gate of view to his limit. Then his entire body was wrapped in a wave of air and slammed into the black iron shield. Bang! There was another low muffled sound, and the black iron shield shattered. But in the blink of an eye, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets once again launched the magnetic release, gathering the scattered black iron sand together and recondensing it into a huge black iron shield. For Sandaime Kazekage's puppet, such a simple magnet release actually doesn't consume much chakra because it doesn't need any extra control at all. As long as the black iron sand is gathered using the characteristics of magnet release, it will be fine. Bang, bang, bang. Soon, muffled sounds reverberated in the practice field. The black iron giant shield was constantly recovering, but it was constantly being smashed by Sui Jin, and the cycle continued. On the sidelines, Xiang Lin and Gaara were dumbfounded. Xiang Lin said, "Does Lord usually train like this? This is too exaggerated. This kind of high intensity, squeezing out every ounce of strength in the body was difficult to do even for a ninja with extraordinary perseverance like a Kai, let alone a girl like Xiang Lin." Maela was also shocked. He thought that he had worked hard enough when he was cultivating, but compared to Hyojin, he found that his efforts were nothing at all. Hyojin did not care about the shock of Xianglin and Gaara on the sidelines. At this time, his mind was completely immersed in attacking the seventh gate of wonder. In the continuous attack, his momentum and chakra were gradually rising. He could even feel the blood in his body beginning to boil, and the wonder gate in his lower abdomen showed signs of loosening, as if it could be broken in an instant with a little more force. Am I going to succeed? With joy in his heart, Hyojin no longer held back, and his whole body and mind exploded. With Hyojin's full strength, Xianglin and Gaara on the sidelines were shocked to find that the speed at which the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets condensed the black iron shield gradually could not keep up with the speed at which Hyojin destroyed it. As soon as the huge black iron shield was formed, it was instantly destroyed by Hyojin, who had already turned into an afterimage. After realizing this, Gaara hurriedly leaped into the training field and pressed both of his hands onto the training field's floor. He shouted, "Crane guard shield." In an instant, quicksand surged, and a small sand guard crane appeared in the training field with its arms open. This was Gaara's current strongest defensive ninjutsu, the crane guard shield. Bang! At this time, an afterimage flashed by, followed by a low muffled sound. The surprise on Gaara's face had just appeared, and before it could even spread, the crane guard shield not far in front of him suddenly exploded, turning into a cloud of flying sand. The second update is here. It's going to be a new week soon, and the leaderboard will be updated. I implore everyone to recommend and support it. It's no trouble at all. Thank you. Also, thank you to all the students who donated today. Thank you. Chapter 1165. Boom! A huge wave of air swept across the entire training ground in an instant. Not only was Gaara's crane guard shield instantly shattered, but even the reinforced floor in the training ground was also lifted in pieces. In the blink of an eye, it was a mess. In Sasuke's living area, what happened? With a violent shake, Sasuke, who was lying on the bed waiting for the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to be born, suddenly sat up, his face full of surprise. The living area he was in was separated from the training ground where Hyojin was located by more than a dozen areas, and there was an inexplicable sealing technique in the middle. But even so, the shock wave caused by Hyojin in the training ground still affected his living area. In the training ground, huff, huff, Hyojin gasped for breath. Realizing that something was wrong, he stopped and deactivated the 8 inner hidden gates. In the last round of eruption, just now, he still did not succeed in opening the 7th gate, the shock gate. For some reason, every time he was at the last step, he was always a little short. If he continued to erupt, not only would his body not be able to bear it, but the training ground would also not be able to withstand it. So he rationally stopped. Allowing the Type 3 biological armor on his body to replenish his chakra, Hyojin glanced at the messy training ground in front of him while analyzing the reason for the failure in his heart. Where did it go wrong? The 8 inner hidden gates was the profound meaning of the Iron Fist style. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any overly delicate techniques. Moreover, he had studied the secret technique scrolls of the 8 inner hidden gates many times, and there was no relevant content in this area. Is it just because the foundation is not enough? Hyojin was a little uncertain for a moment. At this moment, Xianglin, who was standing on the sidelines, suddenly shouted, "Sir, Uchiha Sasuke left his activity area without permission." What? Hyojin frowned in the field. Xiangli sensed a little more and continued, and his aura suddenly became much colder. His chakra gave me a very ominous feeling. It seems that the fusion of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan has been completed. Hyojin was certain in his heart. With a flash, he disappeared from the training ground. At the same time, Sasuke, who had removed the bandage around his eyes, was strolling through one of the passages of the Sky Fortress. Touching the stone bricks on the wall, he looked doubtful. This building seems to be bigger than I thought. Is it a castle on the moon? Then what was that shock just now? Swish! Suddenly, a figure blocked in front of Sasuke. Sasuke stopped in his tracks. River Lord? Obviously, the figure who stopped Sasuke was not a bystander. It was Hyojin, who had temporarily changed his water release clone. At this time, he stared at Sasuke's eyes and said coldly, "Who allowed you to leave the activity area without permission?" Sasuke explained, "I just felt a violent shock and thought that something had happened here. Plus, my eternal Manjikyu Sharingan has been completed, so I came out." After saying that, Sasuke opened his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. In an instant, the ink-colored eyes in his eye sockets instantly turned scarlet. In the center of the scarlet eyes, there was a complex pattern of a hexagram and a three-edged shuriken intertwined together. Staring at the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets, Hyojin carefully observed it and found that the pattern of this pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was similar to Sasuke's in the original space and time, but there were some subtle differences. Using his father's pair of Manjikyu Sharingan to fuse with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan doesn't affect him much. After thinking about it, Hyojin said to Sasuke, "The shock just now was caused by a member of our organization accidentally practicing taijutsu in the practice field. You don't have to worry too much about it." Sasuke asked eagerly, "Is it Sensei?" "No. Uchiha Yin is out on a mission. He is not at the base." Shaking his head, Hyojin continued, "Go back to your living area first. I want to check your Sharingan in detail." Sasuke nodded with some disappointment, then glanced in the direction of a shock. Just now, he was secretly shocked. The shock just now was so violent. It was actually caused by taijutsu. What a terrifying taijutsu. It seems that Amatsukami really has a lot of strong people in addition to Sensei. After escorting Sasuke back to the living area, Hyojin checked Sasuke's new Manjikyu Sharingan and asked, "What kind of pupil technique is it?" After a slight hesitation, Sasuke replied, "It's still Amaterasu and Earth Life Enhancement." Hyojin nodded. This is within his expectations. After all, Sasuke is not a Genjutsu type Uchiha. The probability of the new Manjikyu Sharingan inheriting his father's Genjutsu pupil technique is very small. Sasuke asked at this time, "By the way, didn't you tell me before that the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan can continue to evolve into Rinnegan? Now that I have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, can you tell me the method to evolve the Rinnegan?" Kuroto said, "The acquisition of every bit of power comes with a price. Now is not the time to talk about the Rinnegan. You should first familiarize yourself with the Manjikyu Sharingan. When you completely master the power of the Manjikyu Sharingan and can freely use the merged pupil power, then we can talk about the Rinnegan again." Kuroto nodded. Sasuke thought for a while and gently nodded. "Well, you are right." In his opinion, even a powerful ninja like Sensei Uchiha hasn't touched the Rinnegan yet. And now that he has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, it is indeed too early for him to ask for the Rinnegan. At this time, Hyojin also completed the examination of Sasuke's body. There is no problem with your body, and the new eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is also normal. You can return to Mai. Sasuke hurriedly asked, "Shuguru-sama, can I see Sensei before I return to the village?" Hyojin was a little curious. "Why do you want to see her?" Sasuke said with a little embarrassment, "I just want to tell Sensei in person that I have succeeded. I now have a powerful pupil power that is above the Manjikyu Sharingan." Hyojin was speechless. That's it. He found that Sasuke was a little strange. When he was controlling the fire avatar, he didn't show any mercy and beat this brat up like a punching bag. He didn't know why this brat was so respectful to him when he was controlling the fire avatar. Sasuke nodded with an expectant look on his face. Hyojin said casually, "Oh, she already knows. The first update is here. Please recommend me on Monday, please." Chapter 1166. The next day, Hyojin once again drove the water release clone to Sasuke's living quarters and asked, "Have you packed your luggage?" Sasuke, who was carrying a backpack, nodded his head first and then opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask something. But just as the words were about to come out of his mouth, he held them back, and his eyes were a little absent-minded. Hyojin immediately took out the gloves that he promised to give to Sasuke and casually threw them to Sasuke. "This is a gift from Sensei." Sasuke received the gloves with a look of surprise. Hyojin asked, "It's just a pair of gloves. Is there a need to be so happy?" Sasuke lightly stroked the gloves without explaining anything. After a while, he slowly put on the gloves, and his expression became gloomy again. He thought to himself, "Why didn't Sensei give it to me himself? Is it because I'm not strong enough, so he doesn't want to see me?" Seeing Sasuke put on the gloves directly, the corner of Hyojin's eyes under the mask twitched. This kid is really arrogant. He didn't even get burned. Why did he wear gloves for no reason? It's not even convenient to make hand seals. Immediately, Hyojin was too lazy to think too much about it. He handed a mask without any holes to Sasuke and urged, "Put this on. I'll take you away now." Sasuke absent-mindedly took the mask full of sealing techniques, pondered for a moment, and suddenly said, "Your Excellency, I want to join Amatsuka." Huh? Hyojin was startled for a moment. Sasuke said, "Now that I have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, I should be qualified to join Amatsuka, right?" Looking at Sasuke from head to toe, Hyojin smiled and asked, "Why do you suddenly want to join Amatsuka? You seem to be very against Amatsuka before, right?" If I want to obtain the Rinnegan in the future, I can't leave Amatsuka, so I think I might as well join you directly." After a pause, Sasuke seemed to have thought of another reason and hurriedly said, "And if I join you, our Uchiha clan will be considered a part of Amatsuka, and the clan's safety will be guaranteed in the future." "Yes, that's what I was thinking." Suijin was a little surprised when he heard Kuroto's words. Huh? Can the fusion of pupillary powers also increase intelligence? How come Sasuke seems to have become more shrewd? He even knows how to win over allies. This is not like his character. However, since Sasuke had volunteered to join Amatsuka, Hyojin naturally wouldn't reject him. After all, Hyojin had done so much for him, and it was all for the sake of getting him to join Amatsuka, who would most likely become a six-path elite in the future. After weighing the pros and cons for a while, Suijin took out a set of Homusubi uniform from the ninja bag on his waist and handed it to Sasuke. "With your current strength, you are indeed qualified to join Amatsuka, but to become an official member, you still have to pass the internal assessment of the organization." Looking at the Balrog's black cloak and flame mask that Hyojin handed to him, Sasuke asked curiously, "Why do you have Sensei's equipment?" Hyojin was speechless. Immediately, Kuroto took out a mask with a gale pattern and a lightning pattern from his ninja bag and casually said, "I'm in charge of logistics in the organization. These are spare equipment." Sasuke looked relieved, and then he carefully looked at the cloak and mask in his hand and asked, "So that's how it is. Then, is my code name in the organization the same as Sensei's, Balrog?" Hyojin nodded. "Yes, your code name is also Balrog, but you're not an official member yet. Before the organization gives you a mission, you're not allowed to wear the Balrog's equipment, and you're not allowed to act on behalf of the organization." Sasuke put away the cloak and mask and said, "I'm ready to take the assessment at any time. At present, the organization does not need you to perform any assessment mission. You should return to Mai and wait for the news." After a pause, Hyojin urged again, "Put on the mask, I'll send you away." Holding the previous mask without holes and full of sealing techniques, Sasuke was a little puzzled. "I've already joined the organization. Why do I still need to wear this mask?" Hyojin said, "Don't forget, you're not an official member yet." At this critical moment, Hyojin obviously won't easily reveal the secret of the Sky Fortress. So whether Sasuke joined Amatsuka or not, he must strictly keep the secret of the Sky Fortress from Sasuke. The mask he gave to Sasuke was carefully prepared by Hyojin yesterday. The sealing technique on it can not only isolate the inside of pupillary jutsu, but also has a certain effect of interfering with perception. As long as Sasuke wears it, even if Sasuke has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, it will still be impossible for him to see the real situation inside the Sky Fortress through the mask. Sasuke didn't doubt Hyojin's words and put on the mask honestly, then followed Hyojin all the way out of the Sky Fortress. After a long time, Hyojin took Sasuke to a small island a few hundred miles away from the Sky Fortress, and there is a fixed passenger ship route passing by. Then Hyojin took back the mask and disappeared in front of Sasuke. Looking at the shining ice mirror gradually disappearing in the sky, Sasuke, who landed on the island, covered his eyes with his hands and thought to himself, I finally succeeded. I finally have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that will never be blinded. Immediately after, he put his hand on the ninja bag on his waist and thought to himself, it's best not to tell the clan that I joined Amatsukami without permission. After all, Father's Manjikyu Sharingan was taken by Amatsukami, and Sensei also defeated Jishue and Shinichi-san. If I tell the clan that I joined Amatsukami, they will definitely not understand me. Amatsukami is too powerful. Sensei alone is enough to destroy the entire Uchiha clan. So for the sake of the clan, this is the right thing to do. Turning his head and looking in the direction of the village, Sasuke secretly made up his mind. Since father and brother entrusted the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan to me, then the safety of the clan will be shouldered by me in the dark. This is my mission. At this moment, Sasuke, who has secretly joined Amatsukami, suddenly felt that he was carrying the fate of the entire clan, the cornerstone of protecting the Uchiha clan in the dark. On the other side of Hyojin, after hurriedly returning to the Sky Fortress, Kuroto did not stay in the Sky Fortress for long. Instead, he directly threw his spirit body into the Fire Release avatar. Then, he temporarily sealed the Een Release avatar in a scroll and carried it with him. Then, he quickly left the Sky Fortress and secretly returned to the small island where he left Sasuke. The second chapter is here. I will continue to ask for recommendation votes on Monday. There will be a third chapter later. Chapter 1167. The reason why Hyojin hurriedly returned to the island where he left Sasuke is because he is worried about Sasuke wandering alone in the shinobi world. Although Sasuke's current strength isn't weak, if he really encountered Akatsuki or Otsutsuki samurai, it would be difficult for him to protect himself. Secondly, he needs to go back to the village. After deciding on the location of the ceremony, all that's left is to spend money. However, Hyojin doesn't have any money on hand right now. When Akatsuki launched the last attack, he spent all the money he could just in case. So now he needs to raise a sum of money for the enchantment around the ceremony. As for the source of the money, Kuroto has already considered it. The last time he dealt with Akatsuki's attack, the 5 great shinobi villages agreed to pay a commission to Amatsukami, plus the compensation from the village pretending to be Amatsukami. These 2 sums of money should be enough to cover all the expenses needed for the ceremony. This is also the reason why he temporarily changed the Fire Release clone. After all, it would be too shameful to let Yama, who is mistaken by the public to be an immortal, personally deal with this matter. Suijin had a grudge with Mai and Kyumo during the incident of Kyumo kidnapping Hinata. Wind Chime rolled her eyes in front of Kuroto. Xidagarba couldn't explain the origin of the dust release to Iwama Cure, and Kirin is involved in the relationship between Amatsukami and the Mist. In addition, when Hyojin took the initiative to talk to the village about cooperation, he used the identity of Homusubi. The last time Itachi and Hyojin played a 2-man show in front of the village, they also used the identity of Homusubi. So it is most appropriate for him to use the identity of Homusubi to ask for money. In addition to the debt, Hyojin also has another purpose in returning to the village, and that is to ask Ai about the method to open the 7th gate of the 8 inner gates, the Gate of Wonder. Kuroto feels that Guy should be able to open the 7th gate by now. According to the trajectory of Guy's life in the original timeline, Guy will have the ability to open the 8th gate of death at any time during the 4th Shinobi War. This undoubtedly shows that Guy has already mastered the 7th Gate of Wonder for a long time before the 4th Shinobi War. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to open the 8th Gate of Death so smoothly. Hyojin was not arrogant, nor did he have the intention to compare himself with others. In his opinion, if there was a problem that he could not understand, he should humbly ask others for advice. After a long time, Hyojin returned to the island and secretly monitored Sasuke, who was returning to the nation of fire by boat. After a few days, Sasuke successfully disembarked and returned to the Nation of Fire. However, as soon as Sasuke stepped into the territory of the Country of Fire, he was blocked by a group of people that Hyojin didn't expect. In the forest, Sasuke indifferently looked at Orochimaru, who blocked his way, as well as Kimimaro, Haku, Yugo, and Yamato, who were standing behind Orochimaru, and said indifferently, "Kimimaro, so you are the subordinates of Orochimaru. No wonder you have been looking for trouble with me over and over again." Sasuke is not stupid. Seeing the four ninjas standing respectfully behind Orochimaru, he immediately understood why the ninjas targeted him during the Chunin exam, and also guessed that the person behind the ninjas is likely to be one of the three Sannin of Mai, Orochimaru. This is not difficult to speculate, because Orochimaru once sneaked into Uchiha's mansion and kidnapped him when he was still a child, so he is very clear about Orochimaru's desire for him. Looking at Sasuke's indifferent expression, as if he didn't put them and others in his eyes, Orochimaru slowly pulled out a long sword, stuck out his tongue, and licked his lips, and said with a hoarse smile in his unique voice, as expected of the genius of the Uchiha family, "Even after meeting me, you still don't panic." Sasuke put one hand on his waist and glanced at Orochimaru with disdain. "Orochimaru, you'd better not mess with me. I may not control my strength and accidentally kill you." Hyojin, who was hiding not far away and watching Sasuke all the way, couldn't help but laugh and said to himself, "When you speak, it's the old Sasuke." When Orochimaru became famous as one of the three Sannin of Mai, Sasuke was not yet born. But now Sasuke, facing a strong person like Orochimaru, showed an attitude of not even bothering to pay attention to him. Not to mention Orochimaru, even Hyojin, a bystander, couldn't stand it. Sure enough, as soon as Sasuke's voice fell, the four ninjas standing behind Orochimaru all showed anger on their faces. "Hey!" Orochimaru sneered, but his eyes did not stay on Sasuke. Instead, they moved to where Hyojin was hiding in the distance. Seeing that Orochimaru had discovered him, Hyojin no longer hid. He directly stood on the branch of a big tree, openly watching the confrontation between Orochimaru and Sasuke. When Sasuke saw Hyojin appear with the fire release clone, his face immediately lit up. Orochimaru licked his lips and said, "Fire demon? Looks like your Amatsukami has also set its eyes on Uchiha Sasuke." Hyojin didn't say anything. He just leaned on the tree trunk and silently observed the scene. On the surface, it is difficult for him to judge whether Orochimaru is currently using the body of Yakashoku or some other body. Anyway, in the vision of Byakugan, the chakra reaction in Orochimaru's body is very strong, indicating that this body has enough chakras amount. Another thing that attracted Hyojin's attention was the long sword in Orochimaru's hand. If he remembers correctly, this simple and exquisite long sword should be the Kusanagi sword that Sasuke is used to use in the original space and time. Watching Orochimaru holding the Kusanagi sword and looking for Sasuke, who has just obtained the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Kuroto suddenly had a ridiculous feeling in his heart. Is this considered sending a sword to my door? Then, Hyojin moved his gaze to Haku, behind Orochimaru. Judging from Orochimaru's current reaction, it is obvious that Haku didn't report to Orochimaru that he is the leader of Amatsukami, Yama, after returning to the Sound Village. Of course, Haku probably didn't do this to protect Hyojin, but to protect Orochimaru. Perhaps Haku knows that with Orochimaru's personality, once he learns that his disciple is the leader of Amatsukami, Orochimaru, he will most likely do something dangerous. So in order to protect Orochimaru, Haku chose to hide it. Hyojin's appearance obviously disrupted Orochimaru's deployment. Kuroto pondered for a moment, then immediately ordered the four ninjas standing behind him, "You go install Homasubi. I will personally deal with Uchiha and Sasuke." The four shinobi quickly responded, and with a flash, they surrounded Suijin, who was standing on the branch of the tree. At this time, Orochimaru focused his attention on Sasuke and said with a smile, Now let me see how much of a genius Uchiha is worth. Third update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. In addition, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1168. Orochimaru was undoubtedly a proud person. This could be seen from the Mai's destruction plan that he launched in his original time and space that was of no benefit to him. Therefore, in the face of the contempt of a 13 or 14-year-old Uchiha, he did not show it on his face, but he was very angry in his heart. This was because Sasuke's contempt for him reminded him of the losses he had suffered under the Sharingan Eye in the past. Therefore, he clasped his hands together with a smirk on his face. Boom! Accompanied by the shaking of the ground, 2 coffins rose from the ground and appeared in the field. Then, the coffin lids of the 2 coffins fell, revealing the figures of the first generation and the second generation, who obviously still had the clothing style of the Warring States period. Orochimaru had a playful look on his face. Let the first generation and the second generation test the strength of a genius like you, Uchiha. Staring at the 2 impure bodies in the coffins that looked like corpses on the surface, Sasuke curled his lips. Hey, Orochimaru, have you fallen to the point of playing with corpses? First generation, second generation? Are you kidding me? Orochimaru first made a seal, urging the first generation and second generation to walk out of the coffins, and then slowly said, I hope your strength matches your tone. Looking at the first generation and second generation who walked out of the coffins, Sasuke's face sank. Although he now had the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, he was, after all, just a genin who had just graduated from a ninja school not long ago. In addition, the Orochimaru in this time and space did not launch the Mai's destruction plan in the original time and space, and the impure bodies of the first generation and second generation had not appeared in front of the public, so he did not know much about the impure Earth Tensei. From the looks of it, it seems like it really is the first generation and second generation. Sasuke was not afraid, even though he had doubts in his heart. In his opinion, Sensei is paying attention to him at this moment, and this is a heaven-sent opportunity for him to show off his strength to Sensei. So not only is he not afraid, but he's also eager to show off the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan he has just obtained in front of Sensei. Hiss hiss, soon, when Orochimaru activated the first gen and second gen's impure earth form, steam rose from the 2 impure earth forms. As the steam spread from their bodies, the 2 corpse-like gray bodies gradually came to life. Their dull eyes also slowly regained their vigor. A moment later, the first-generation Earth Physique said, This technique again? The second-generation Earth Physique's face was gloomy, and his eyes swept around the audience, pausing on Hyojin and Orochimaru, and then locked on Sasuke in front of him. Looking at the Uchiha emblem on Sasuke's clothes, he said, Uchiha. At this time, Orochimaru smiled coldly and said, First generation, second generation, don't underestimate this Uchiha boy in front of you. He is a genius Uchiha who awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 13. After listening to Orochimaru's words, both the first generation and second generation Earth Physique looked at Sasuke curiously. Seeing the first generation and second generation Earth Physique suddenly come to life and speak, Sasuke immediately activated his eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. Noticing the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets, the first-generation Earth Physique was surprised. Second-generation Earth Physique, who has studied the Manjikyu Sharingan in depth, immediately judged from the complex pattern on Sasuke's Sharingan that Sasuke's Sharingan is not an ordinary Manjikyu Sharingan, but the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is the same as Uchiha Madara's. At this time, Orochimaru also noticed the pattern on Sasuke's Sharingan. It is a little different from the pattern on the Manjikyu Sharingan that awakened during the Chunin exam. So his expression changed, and he suddenly thought of something, and suddenly a look of ecstasy appeared on his face, and he urged the first generation and second generation Earth Physique. Hurry up! The first generation and second generation Earth Physique just wanted to say something, but suddenly their expressions stiffened, and then they began to make hand seals. Obviously, for the sake of insurance, Orochimaru didn't let go of his control over the Hokage and Hokage, although this greatly weakened the strength of the Hokage and Hokage. It allowed him to completely control them. Would release, Tree World Descent, Jinjutsu, Dark Walking Technique. In a flash, the two Earth Physique completed the hand seals and launched their respective ninjutsu. Rumble, in a violent earthquake, countless trees broke out of the ground and grew wildly with the trees that existed in the forest. At the same time, a darkness enveloped the forest, like a black hole sucking away all the light. Orochimaru jumped out of the field and said, "In Sasuke's eye sockets, it should be the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, like Danzo." The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, above the Manjikyu Sharingan, left a deep impression on Orochimaru. At that time, he was defeated by the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan of Danzo. If it was not for the curse on Haku, Yamato, and the others, he would have been killed by Danzo's gaze. Then he glanced at Hyojin in the distance, who was dressed as Homusubi of Amatsukami, and said, "Amatsukami is targeting Sasuke, most likely because of Sasuke's eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. I don't know if there are other members of Amatsukami nearby. I can't drag this on any longer. I must end this quickly." Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud roar on the battlefield that was shrouded in darkness. Orochimaru looked toward the direction of the sound, and suddenly his expression was stagnant. At this time, a huge purple Susanoo broke through the darkness, broke away from the trees, and stood in the forest. What shocked Orochimaru is that this Susanoo is close to 100 meters in height, which is 2 or 3 times larger than the Susanoo that Sasuke launched during the Chunin exam. And not only is it wearing heavy armor, but it also has a bow in one hand and an arrow in the other, and it even has a pair of huge wings on its back. In addition, Sasuke was not under the Susanoo as before, but in a diamond-shaped space between the eyebrows of the huge Susanoo. The complete form of Susanoo? Orochimaru was surprised and happy at the same time. If he was only suspicious before, now he can basically conclude that the Susanoo in Sasuke's eye sockets is the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, because this kind of Susanoo with wings is the complete Susanoo that can only be used by the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan. He has confirmed this point in the battle between Hyojin and Danzo, who controlled the fire-release doppelganger. On Susanoo, Sasuke still had a contemptuous look on his face as he said, "Orochimaru, I'm no longer the child I used to be, and you don't seem to have made any progress. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 1169. In the face of Sasuke's sarcasm, Orochimaru's mouth twitched. What an annoying kid. After saying that, Orochimaru, who was eager to end the battle as quickly as possible, stopped arguing with Sasuke. Instead, he quickly made hand seals and repeatedly urged Hashirama to use the impure earth form. Under the control of Orochimaru, the first generation and second generation's impure earth body moved again. Almost instantly, countless trees grew wildly again from all directions wrapped around Sasuke's complete Susanoo, and the second generation's impure earth body also moved to the crown of a big tree, quickly made a hand seal, aimed at Sasuke in between the eyebrows of Susanoo, and launched the water-release ninjutsu, water cut wave. Whoosh, with a whistling sound, the rapid water beam into a line, like a laser, shot toward Sasuke. Sasuke completely ignored the attack of the first generation and second generation's impure earth body, and directly urged his complete Susanoo to sweep around with a long arrow. Rumble. In an instant, under the sweep of the huge Susanoo, which was hundreds of meters high, the earth trembled, the whole forest shook, and smoke and dust flew. And under this indiscriminate sweep, whether it was the first generation's impure earth body's tree world descent or the second generation's water cut wave, both were annihilated in the monstrous smoke and dust. How could this be? Orochimaru, who was flying back, was surprised. He did not expect that the power of the young Sasuke Susanoo was not inferior to the previous Danzo and Amatsukumi's fire demon, or even better. Obviously, Orochimaru doesn't know that even if Sasuke also has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, as the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra, he is obviously stronger than other possessors of the Eternal Eye. Under normal circumstances, he thought that the 13 or 14-year-old Sasuke would be a pushover, and that his pupil power would definitely be weaker than that of Danzo and Homusubi. But in reality, the childish Sasuke's pupil power was the strongest out of all of them. Similarly, the four ninjas were also forced to retreat by the storm. So powerful, Yugo and Yamato were inwardly astonished as they retreated amidst the gigantic windstorm. They knew that Sasuke, who had awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, was no longer the same as before, but they never expected that Sasuke would be this strong. Kimimaro and Haku were also surprised. More than 2 months ago, when Kamikaze Amatsukumi attacked the Akatsuki, they had seen Sasuke's strength, so both of them were very surprised that Sasuke's strength soared so much in just a few months. No wonder Orochimaru Sama has been secretly paying attention to Sasuke and Naruto. They really aren't ordinary ninjas. For a time, Kimimaro's heart was filled with mixed feelings. In the face of the storm of broken wood, gravel, and smoke, Suijin, who was standing on the branch of the tree, did not move. He still crossed his arms over his chest and leaned quietly on the trunk, calmly watching the changes in the field. The tree he was standing on seemed to be protected by an invisible force, and the raging windstorm was like a torrent hitting a hard reef. It helplessly slid to the sides. Sasuke on the Susanoo also turned his head and looked in the direction of Hyojin. "Sensei is looking at me." Feeling Hyojin's gaze, Sasuke felt that he was full of strength. Looking down, with the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, Kuroto quickly found the figures of Hashirama and Naidame-sama and secretly analyzed. Wood release, water release. These are indeed the ninjutsu that Hashirama and Naidame-sama are good at. Could it be that Orochimaru really resurrected the two Hokage-sama? Forget it. Everything will be clear after I get rid of Orochimaru. With a thought, Sasuke urged the Susanoo to flap its wings and set off a shockwave in the direction of Orochimaru. And taking advantage of the moment when Orochimaru was resisting the shockwave and had no time to pay attention to other things, Kuroto immediately urged Susanoo to draw his bow and shoot an arrow at lightning speed. Swish! The power and speed of the arrow shot by the complete form Susanoo is obviously much stronger than the previous half-body form. So in the harsh whistling sound, Orochimaru, who had already hidden hundreds of meters away, was instantly hit by the arrow. In an instant, blood splattered. The huge arrow completely penetrated Orochimaru's abdomen and passed through his body, nailing Orochimaru to the trunk of a big tree. Sasuke looked disdainful. "With this kind of strength, you dare to covet my Sharingan? Ridiculous." But just when Sasuke was about to remove the Susanoo, his pupils suddenly shrank. He found that Orochimaru, who was nailed to the tree, twisted his body like a snake and broke free from the arrow. At the same time, the shocking wound also secreted some kind of mucus, which prevented the blood from splashing, so that the wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sasuke curled his lips. "It's sticky, so disgusting." Orochimaru glanced at the huge arrow beside him that was still exuding a powerful chakra fluctuation. His eyes flashed. He subconsciously licked his lips and shouted, "Uchiha Sasuke, you belong to me." Immediately, he made a seal to relax the control of the two impure bodies, so that the two impure bodies recovered a certain amount of will. Because he knew very well that the impure body was like a puppet. Even if it was the first generation or the second generation, it was certainly not the opponent of this Uchiha genius who was beyond his imagination. So if he wanted to hunt successfully, he must bear some risk of losing control. Chapter 1170. Evil Chakra. Sasuke's face turned cold as he listened to the words of the second-generation impure body. He wasn't sure if this corpse-like monster in front of him was the real second-generation Naruto, but he was very disgusted with the evaluation of chakra that the second generation gave him. After all, anyone would be unhappy to be labeled as evil for no reason, not to mention the prideful Sasuke. The first-generation impure body shook his head and didn't agree with his younger brother's suggestion. Finji, I've already told you not to make any hasty conclusions. We don't know anything about this Uchiha young man in front of us, so how can we easily judge who is right and who is wrong? Besides, we're already dead, so we shouldn't meddle in the affairs of the shinobi world anymore. Humph, you're just playing tricks. Hearing the argument of the second-generation impure body, it seemed that as long as they fought seriously, they could really kill him. Sasuke couldn't bear it anymore, so he coldly snorted and activated Susanoo. Boom! Instantly, under Sasuke's control, Susanoo swung its right arm that was holding the arrow and smashed the first-generation and second-generation impure bodies. In a loud noise, the first-generation and second-generation impure bodies that couldn't dodge in time were smashed into ashes. After the successful attack, Sasuke coldly said, "With this little strength, how dare you point your fingers at my chakra?" Whoosh! Suddenly, a breeze blew, blowing away the rolling smoke on the ground. Without the cover of the smoke, the figures of the first-generation and second-generation impure bodies that were reassembling appeared in Sasuke's vision at this moment. They can recover by themselves? Slightly surprised, Sasuke didn't hesitate and activated Susanoo to launch another round of attacks, shattering the first-generation and second-generation impure bodies that had just recovered. However, just like before, in the blink of an eye, the first-generation and second-generation impure bodies recovered under Sasuke's eyes. From afar, Orochimaru smirked and said, "They are truly immortal. I'd like to see how long your ocular power can last." The corner of Sasuke's mouth rose, and immediately canceled Susanoo, and immediately used his Manjikyu Sharingan technique, Amaterasu, as he fell from the air. In that instant, before he even landed on the ground, the exceptional talent that had just recovered to its original state, the second-generation Earth body, was ignited with an expanse of scorching black flames. The second King Yinlua's impure Earth form was scorched by the black flames. Amaterasu, the first-generation dirt physique, did not resist, and said with a smile, "A very smart countermeasure. The Edo physique of Edo Tensei can indeed recover continuously, but the black flame of Amaterasu can also carry out endless attacks." After being hit by Amaterasu, the Edo physique will inevitably fall into a cycle of recovery and destruction for a certain period of time. Whoosh! Almost at the moment when the first generation and the second generation dirt physique were hit by the black flame of Amaterasu and fell into a cycle of recovery and destruction, Sasuke, who landed, passed by them and attacked Orochimaru with lightning speed. There is no doubt that after discovering the immortal characteristics of the Edo physique, Sasuke immediately changed his target. After temporarily restricting the actions of the first generation and the second generation dirt physique with the black flame of Amaterasu, he went straight to Orochimaru, who was the caster of the technique. Seeing that Sasuke's response was so decisive and swift, Orochimaru was quite surprised. But after all, he was a veteran Mysanin, so he quickly reacted and immediately waved the Kusanagi sword in his hand and slashed at Sasuke. Clang, with a crisp sound of metal colliding, the Kusanagi sword in Orochimaru's hand easily cut the steel-forged kunai in Sasuke's hand and pressed against Sasuke's throat. At the same time, two big snakes came out from behind Orochimaru and instantly entangled Sasuke's body and deliberately bound Sasuke's hands, so that Sasuke could not make hand seals. This sword, under the shock, Sasuke stared at the smooth fracture of the kunai in his hand and was stunned for a moment, then immediately moved his eyes to the sharp Kusanagi sword in Orochimaru's hand. Orochimaru skillfully avoided Sasuke's eyes, licked his tongue, and smiled. "Hey, if I wait another year or two, I'm afraid it won't be easy to catch you." In just one confrontation, Orochimaru used the unusual sharpness of the Kusanagi sword in his hand to catch Sasuke off guard and suddenly reverse the situation. Soon, the two big snakes that entangled Sasuke bit Sasuke one after another and injected venom into Sasuke's body. "I'll take your body." Seeing that the venom had been successfully injected into Sasuke's body, although Orochimaru was still vigilant and maintained the state of avoiding Sasuke's eyes, the tone of his mouth had returned to the previous teasing tone. "So you're not just coveting my Sharingan." At this moment, Sasuke's cold voice poured into Orochimaru's ears. Orochimaru's face suddenly changed. "Jinjutsu?" From Sasuke's cold and calm tone, he can clearly tell that Sasuke was not affected by his venom. And with his rich combat experience, he immediately understood that there's only one possibility in this situation. That is, he has fallen into a Jinjutsu, and the scene in front of him just now did not happen. In a trance, the scene in front of Orochimaru's eyes changed. Then he suddenly found that he had indeed pressed the Kusanagi sword against Sasuke's throat, but the two big snakes that entangled Sasuke had fallen to the ground, and because of the illusion, he himself could not move. At this time, Sasuke casually took the Kusanagi sword from Orochimaru's hand, and while playing with it, he said, "Under my Sharingan, your little tricks are meaningless, but the sword in your hand is very good. You can actually do such a thing." Looking at the light reflected from the blade when Sasuke took away his Kusanagi sword, only then did Orochimaru realize how he fell into a Jinjutsu just now. It turned out that after Sasuke noticed that Orochimaru deliberately avoided his gaze, he immediately shifted his gaze to the Kusanagi sword, and through the mirror-like blade of the sword, he cleverly cast a Jinjutsu on Orochimaru. Under normal circumstances, refracted vision generally does not meet the conditions to cast a Jinjutsu, and Orochimaru understands this, so he did not take any precautions. But Sasuke is different. Not only does he have the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, but he is also the reincarnation of Otsutsuki Indra, so his pupil power is far stronger than Orochimaru's expectations. And this is the result of Sasuke not being good at Jinjutsu. If Sasuke was an Uchiha who is good at Jinjutsu, then with Sasuke's pupil power, he would be able to easily kill Orochimaru with just a glance, just like Danzo. At this time, Sasuke put the Kusanagi sword in his hand against Orochimaru's throat. If it weren't for Jiraiya Sensei's face, you would already be dead by now. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1171. Feeling the coldness of the Kusanagi passing through his throat, Orochimaru knew that he was defeated by the Sharingan again. He had fought against Uchiha Jishue, Uchiha Shinichi, Uchiha Takan, Itachi Uchiha, and even Danzo, but all of them failed without exception. The title of Konoha Sannin that he earned in the Shinobi War has been trampled by the Sharingan again and again. And this time, he was defeated by Sasuke Uchiha. "You little brat." Orochimaru's eyes were gloomy, although he couldn't move because of the Jinjutsu, but the killing intent on his face was constantly accumulating. At the same time, he was also surprised by the speed of Sasuke's progress. One must know that before the end of the Chunin exam, that only half a year ago, Sasuke was still a rookie that he could easily deal with, a child that was not worthy of him personally dealing with. Unexpectedly, the Chunin exam awakened Sasuke's Manjikyu Sharingan, instantly stepping into the Kage level, becoming an existence that even he was afraid of. Because of this, the cautious Orochimaru didn't continue to let Sasuke grow, but within a few months after Sasuke awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, he immediately deployed and carried out this hunt. Kuroto thought that with him personally taking action this time, along with the assistance of Kimimaro and the other four ninjas, dealing with Sasuke, who had just awakened his Manjikyu Sharingan, should be a piece of cake. But Kuroto did not expect that in just a few months, Sasuke, who had awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan, has grown again. Not only does he possess the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, which is superior to the Manjikyu Sharingan, but even his grasp of the battlefield situation has made great progress. At this moment, Sasuke, who was holding the sword against Orochimaru's throat, suddenly jumped and flashed to the side. Rumble. In the next instant, wooden stakes shot out from the ground where he had been standing, accompanied by a rumbling sound. At the same time, Kimimaro, Haku, Yamato, and Yugo appeared in front of Orochimaru, protecting Orochimaru, who was still affected by the Jinjutsu. Holding the Kusanagi sword that he snatched from Orochimaru, Sasuke glanced at Kimimaro and Yamato and said, "If you want to continue, then I will accompany you to the end." At this time, Haku stepped forward to remove the Jinjutsu for Orochimaru, while Kimimaro looked at Orochimaru and waited for Orochimaru's order. Although Orochimaru was very angry after getting rid of the Jinjutsu, he looked at the distant Homusubi of Amitsukami, who seemed to be watching the show. He didn't know when the Homusubi would make a move, but he knew that he had failed this time. Continuing to fight would not only be meaningless, but it would also cause unnecessary losses. After weighing the pros and cons, he said in a gloomy tone, "Uchiha Sasuke, it seems that I have underestimated you.